bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game.
Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Welcome. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Happy Halloween. Today is Tuesday, October 31st. 304 days into the new year, just 61 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? It's Halloween. Really glad that you chose to spend your Halloween evening with us here on Fade to Black. Tonight we have very special guest. Randy Williams is here. Now, we're going to discuss his new book, and it's all about Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. Yeah, man. That's how you spend a Halloween, right there. Tomorrow night, live from the UK, we have Hugh Newman here to talk about his new book, Stone Circles. That's right. Thursday night is another Fader night with John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom Live. The call-in numbers are 323-825-5045 or 323-275-9695. You can follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do, at JChurchRadio. Come and hang out with us. We use TweetDeck. And as you know, the audience, the Fadernauts, they crank out a couple of thousand tweets a night in the conversations over there. So just use hashtag F2B. That's what you want to use, hashtag F2B. And that is our sandbox, our little slice of Twitter heaven. And what's really cool is we use Twitter differently than everybody else does. Okay, so we gather every night there, hashtag F2B. And if you get TweetDeck, then you will see what the sandbox does. And you guys, man, look at these Halloween gifts tonight popping up in Twitter. Oh, look at that. How many is that in a row? That's got to be, I'm going to guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, Jimmy Page, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 32 gifts, 33 in about 30 seconds. Well done. So if you want to come and hang out and see what everybody is doing, hashtag F2B. Also follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The conversations are amazing there. We have the chat rooms over in Spreaker and, of course, KGRA, the Planet. And you can hang out there, too, as well. Very safe place to hang out. Share your ideas, your concerns, your questions. And if you do have questions, hashtag F2BQ in Twitter. Hashtag, not hashbag. That was last night. Hashbag. Hashtag F2BQ on Twitter. All right. Any questions or comments, you can do that right now. And, okay. Lots to talk about. Let's not let our emotions get the best of us today. All right? There you go. Email Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And, there's breaking news. I'll get to all of that in just a second. Of course, we know about the terror attack today in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, New York City. I'll get to that in just a bit. But tomorrow night, November 1st, we will announce our next late night talk show podcast host contest. That's going to be tomorrow night. We will have the contest rules, how to enter, where to enter. All of that will be tomorrow night, okay? Courtesy of your friends over at Tascam Pro. We have a complete podcast studio that we are going to be giving away. Also, the winner, all right? The winner, the chosen one, will have their first podcast broadcasted right here on the Game Changer Network for the entire world to listen to. And just like we posted out there, and I really mean this, we're going to give you the gear, we're going to give you the audience, we're going to give you the recognition. You are going to hit the ground running. Think about that. Okay, so we're going to announce the contest tomorrow night. Also, speaking of podcast, I've been talking about this now for the last 2 weeks, and I want to thank everybody that is participating. Unity Workshops is starting production on their first series of podcasts, and they're calling on all researchers and experiencers on portals to join this project. They do need help, and the reason why, again, I keep saying this, we could do all of this ourselves. That is not what UniWiki, the Unity Workshops, everything that has been put together for our community, that's not what it's about. It's not about us. It's about you. And we want you to participate. So producers, writers, right? Any experiences, video, audio testimonials, everything that you need is over at Jimmy Church Radio's Facebook page. That's all you got to do, Jimmy Church Radio. And the links are there. You can sign up at theunityproject.org. You can contact John at modernmasters.org. And, of course, Rita right here at jimmychurchradio.com. Okay? I've also, over the last 2 weeks, we've been making a couple of other announcements. I need to get those out of the way because it is very important. Contact in the Desert 2018 now has a new home. It's the Renaissance Hotel. Okay, in Palm Springs, Indian Wells. That's all one community out there. All right, so you can go to contactinthedesert.com. We have the links over at jimmychurchradio.com. They're also going to post right here on Twitter and all of the information that you need. Now, it's air-conditioned, handicap accessibility, a nice, beautiful, open night desert sky for all of that sky watching that we're going to be doing, courtesy of Bearing Optics and all the night vision, right? Okay, so all of the information that you need is right there. Our next event is coming up February 9th through the 12th, 2018, at the LAX Hilton. It is the Conscious Life Expo. Tickets and info are over at consciouslifeexpo.com. Again, we only do, we're cutting back. We're only doing the biggest events all year long. We did, for a couple of years there, we were doing about one event a month. And when you do that and you do, every other month and combine that with other things, it's too exhausting, tearing down the studio, packing up, getting on planes, coming back, doing another week worth of shows coast to coast. And plus last year we were taping for History Channel all year long. It was just insane. So that's it. We're just doing a few events. We're doing a Conscious Life Expo, Contact in the Desert, and E-City Ranch. That's what we can do next year in 2018. Okay? Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We have over 700 archive shows right there for you. Apple, Android, all platforms. It's just $2 a month. Go and subscribe right now over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also become a Fadernaut over in our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. You're going to get the bunker cam. You're going to get commercial-free downloadable archives. You can become a game changer, autograph shirts, hats, all that stuff, whatever you want. and it's all available. Plus, you get the bunker cam. Hello, everybody on the bunker cam. How you doing? And every night before the show on the bunker cam, I spend 5 minutes with all of the Fadernauts and just kind of do a little private chat session. And sometimes I even talk about secret stuff. Well, you can get your own bunker cam. Just go over to our membership section. It's very, very cool. All right. Don't forget all of our sponsors here. And I do want to thank everybody that has ordered from Numana. They are our newer sponsor, and we've only had them on here for 2 weeks. And the amount of support that you guys have done with us through Numana is great, because we are sending out autographed T-shirts for every order over $100. It's that simple. So click on the Numana banner and go and order. And one of the cool things, all of our sponsors here, Life Change Tea, right? The best supplements, the best tea to change your body, your family, everything, just to make sure that your system is right. Life Change Tea, right? River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. It is the best coffee in the world. All of it. Ancient Life Oil, CBDs, Sacred Skulls. I don't have mine on tonight. It's over at the house. And Numana, right? Bearing Optics. Each one of our sponsors are the best, and they're part of our family. And it's really cool that Life Change Tea and River Moon and New Pharma are all going to be at the Conscious Life Expo. So when you come out to L.A. and hang out at the expo, you're going to meet everybody that you hear on the show. Ronnie McMullen and Juanita and Jeff from River Moon, and, of course, Chip Paul from New Pharma. They're all going to be there. So just come and hang out with us, okay? There you go. Thank you to everybody that has ordered from Numana. Oh, man, you guys are prepping to make sure that your family's taken care of, and that's really, really cool. All right. Happy birthday to today, by the way. Vanilla Ice is 50. I can't even believe I just said that. Vanilla Ice is 50. Comedian Rob Schneider today is 54. And what's weird about that is last night we started watching his new series. It's called Rob. I think we found it on Amazon Prime. And we started watching, we nearly binged it. I think we got through 3 episodes last night. And it's really, really good. It's really funny. I can't even believe it. His wife, his real wife is in the show. His real daughter is in the show. And it's funny. It's really well done. And we were like, wow, this is pretty cool. Today, it's his birthday. That's synchronicity. That's weird. Just weird. Also today, Beastie Boy, Ad Rock, Adam Horowitz is 51. Happy birthday, Adam Horowitz. Okay, our dead guy's birthday today is John Candy. Yeah, bums me out. 1950 to 1994, died at the tender young age of 43. And listen to this. I went through, I didn't do it all, right? I just did, a few select movies. But listen to this. The Blues Brothers, Uncle Buck, 1941, Stripes, The Great Outdoors, Summer Rental, Spaceballs, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, National Lampoon's Vacation, The Rescuers Down Under, Cool Runnings, Wagons East, Who's Harry Crumb, and Canadian Bacon. Right? His best, though? Out of all of them, I was thinking, where do I go? Obviously, Spaceballs, right? No. And I'm like, well, okay. I got to go with Johnny LaRue, SCTV. Man, John Candy. His best quote. Okay, I'm going to throw it out here. I want your quotes. Yeah, thank you for that, Karen. Very cool. Very tasty gift right there. The best John Candy quote. Give me yours, because I'm gonna do mine right now. Are you ready? Orange whip. Orange whip. 3 orange whips. My man. John Candy, happy birthday. On this day in history, OTD, 1938. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't do that's from last night. There's my show notes. I was all wrapped up today with the terror attack, right, in New York. And got sucked into it. And I've been talking a lot over the last few years now about the news, right? Not in a fear porn sort of way, just in a way of how to read it, how to watch it, how to deal with it. And so last week I posted a series of comments over on my Facebook page about the daily headlines. And it seems that every single day we have the biggest news breaking in the history of the world. It's absolutely insane. As crazy as that statement may be, and it's bold and it's strong, and I get that, but it's actually true. Every day, it's the biggest news ever. Every single day. How do we do this? How does the mainstream media pull this off? Every single day. And I've been warning you, right? I've been warning you. Watch, right? Just watch. Now, I need you to think about tomorrow in advance, by the way. Because it's like this. Although I could list the headline of every single day over the last year, I could do it right now, right? I can't because it would take 3 hours to read, and the show was only 3 hours long. You would have 365 bombastic, huge headlines, each one topping the day before. It's gotten to the point now that these headlines are getting bigger and bigger and bolder. And if you think about it, in no particular order, in the last 2 months, we've had the hurricanes hitting Texas and Florida and destroying nearly every island in the Caribbean. Think about that for a second. Huge. Leveling entire islands. Nobody lives there anymore. Think about that. Think about what happened to Puerto Rico, Florida, the Keys, right? Houston, Texas. Think about that for a second. We had that. We had 2 earthquakes devastating Mexico City. Remember that? Probably don't. How about North Korea and the impending nuclear war? We now have 3 carrier battle groups sitting off of the coast of North Korea. We've flown our B-52s out of this country. They're now sitting in Guam. B-2 bombers out of this country sitting in Guam. Getting ready. B-1 bomber Lancers. Getting ready right now. Remember those headlines? That was just last week. We had the Las Vegas shooting. 59 people killed. Biggest mass shooting in the United States history. It just happened, right? 3 weeks ago. The conspiracy behind that. It is buried in the news. You know, in the past week, the Mueller investigation, which has been going on long enough, right? Remember Comey being fired, right? Was this an impeachable offense? Huge news. Inserting Mueller turning around and doing all of the ransacking homes and invading homes and searching and search and seizure. And then, you know, this past week, the investigation and the arrests that happened yesterday. How about the NFL, right? Taking a knee. How it dominated, you know? Think about this. Harvey Weinstein, Syria, Iran, Russia, Spain. How about Obamacare, WikiLeaks, ransomware taking down all of the companies in Europe, in Russia. Think about this. The hacking that is going on right now. How about Equifax? Half of the United States population's personal information down to Social Security numbers was exposed and is now for sale right now in the dark web. Think about this. It's been the last 2 months, keeping us all twisted up We don't know what's going on anymore. And in between all of those headlines, there's another 30 that I've forgotten. It's gotten that effective. And between all of the ones that I have forgotten and the ones that I have listed, we've got the daily tweets from Trump messing with everybody, keeping us just our head on a swivel. We don't know what's real anymore. The fake news, right? It's got everybody in Washington, D.C. fighting. Everybody. The Oval Office, we don't even know who works there anymore. Right? All of that in and out, the revolving doors, the craziness, the finger pointing. The world, right now, the world doesn't know what's going on. It's insane. All of it. It's just insane. So last week, I had said that Monday, yesterday, would bring the arrest. The biggest news of the year. The biggest news of the year, topping everything else, topping Puerto Rico and Florida and Houston, Texas, Las Vegas. Think about this. That was yesterday. And I said that you would forget the news from yesterday. I guaranteed it. You would forget the news from last week. And you know what? That's easy enough to predict because I'm not the amazing Kreskin. No, far from it. But I had also said that the news on Tuesday, today, would bring another headline that would erase the Mueller arrest from your mind. And you know what? It happened. It happened. Today, we got the terror attack in Manhattan. Think about this. As tragic as it is, 8 people have died. Horrible, horrible. But it was predictable. What is truly amazing is this. Throughout the day, today, as the news broke, and I caught it literally minutes after it happened. I was right there. I had no news. I had nothing but a truck running amok in Manhattan. I started with that. And I reported on it all day. Okay? And I stayed on top of it. Seconds after things were breaking, I confirmed, I vetted, I posted. I stayed on top of it, and I chose to do that. It's significant. It's Manhattan. It's New York City, and I understand that. So I wanted to make sure that everybody out there that didn't have access to the news, maybe they're at work, what have you, that for those that are just hanging out on Facebook and Twitter, that I would bust this news and I would get it out there hopefully first, and I would stay accurate. And that's what I did. But you know what? Throughout the day, through all of the news services and all of the wires and everything that I was monitoring today, and I was alone in the bunker, I was able to concentrate and get things done, stay on the phones and just make sure that I had accurate reporting today. But you know what? You know what was missing today in the news? There was not one mention of Mueller, of Manafort, of Gates, of Papadopoulos. Yesterday, this was the biggest news ever in the history of everything. Yesterday, right? Think about that for a second. Every mainstream news outlet, yesterday, everyone, right, left, center, every single one said the exact same thing. It was the biggest news ever. And today, we have a new name. And it's not Mueller, Manafort, Gates, or Papadopoulos. Nope. It's Sayfullo Saipov. It's the worst terror attack in New York City since 9/11. And as tragic as the story is, it's the perfect headline to erase the day before. It's very, very effective. And it happened. Now, here we are today. Is history rewriting itself? Is something going on? Is something happening here that we need to be aware of? I'm not sure what is happening. I do know that the build of headlines, of news, of tragedy, of news, of things grows every single day. I don't know how we topped Harvey in Houston. I don't know how we did. I don't know how we topped Florida. I don't know how we topped Puerto Rico. We did. You know, what happened in Mexico City was just, it's unbelievable. And Las Vegas, 59 people dead. A conspiracy, a single shooter from the Mandalay Bay from the 32nd floor kills 59 concert goers with machine guns. Right? Tragic. It's gone from the news. Gone. That is how effective it is. And how to top an investigation into corruption, into our own government and what is going on right now, and the arrests that were made yesterday, no matter what you believe or what your affiliations are with, it doesn't matter. That is really big news. Either you are for it or against it. You're crying lies and you're crying Uranium One and Hillary, or you're crying, against Trump. It doesn't matter. The headline itself is huge. How is that going to get erased? I guarantee you barely remember that even happened yesterday. How do you do that? You do that with this today. Now, I ask you, and I'm serious, what is tomorrow going to bring? What could possibly top this? What could possibly top the events of the last 2 months every single day? I don't get it. I really don't. So with that, happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween. Let's get this party started. Tonight, Randy Williams is here. We are going to have some fun, tell some stories about Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. So get comfortable. Let's disconnect. Let's do this. All right? Tomorrow, we'll discuss the headlines. Tonight, it's Jack the Ripper with Randy Williams. Stay right there. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Tepe.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween. Glad you're spending your night with us right here on Fade to Black. Little sugar overload. You know I'm doing it. Tonight, our guest is Randy Williams. He's a Pennsylvania-based private investigator and describes himself as follows. I'm a fighter and a lover of martial arts, a lover of true crime novels, a lover of word puzzles, lover of things Italian, lover of wine, horses, travel, and foreign languages, women, lover of Chinese culture, and above all, lover of mystery. Kind of sounds like me, right? He's the owner, well, aside from the martial arts side of things, but I do watch Bruce Lee movies. He's the owner of Black Stallion Security and Investigations and the founder of the Close Range Combat Academy, a worldwide martial arts organization with branches in the United States, UK, Europe, and Asia. He has written 9 books on the Chinese martial art of Wing Chun Gung Fu and Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror, which is his second venture into fictional writing. Tonight, we're going to discuss his new book about Holmes and the greatest set of crimes known in history, the brutal murders perpetrated by the criminal who became known as Jack the Ripper. And I would like to welcome to the first time to Fade to Black, author Randy Williams. Randy, good evening.
Hi, Jimmy.
How are you,
happy
man?
Halloween. Or happy Samhain or Samhain, or how do you pronounce that?
Close enough. That's how I pronounce it.
All right.
Yeah, good enough. How you doing, Randy? Happy Halloween.
Great. Happy to be here.
Now, you get the first-time guest disclaimer tonight, so let's get that out of the way first. The disclaimer is it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. You ready to go?
So this means I'm not going to get Roganized?
Man, you went right there out of the gate. Yeah, that was pretty painful. No, I have a different set of morals and standards that I run with over here, and it's called respect. So there you go.
Love it. Me too.
Yeah, you're always all guests have my respect on this show. And look, it's okay. This is the truth, Randy. It is okay to ask questions, to debate, to have fun, and to learn with a guest. All of that is okay, but you do that with respect. That's all. It's that simple. That's all you do. You just, when you invite somebody over, he does his podcast from his home right here in the valley, up the road in Bell Canyon. And so you invite somebody into your home, right, to be on your show, to be on your podcast as a guest. He's, and that's it. The rules are there, man. You were raised by your parents to have respect to your guests, and that's it. So that's what I do here. I treat everybody with that same respect. For you, though, I want to discuss a couple of things before we get into the scary stuff here, which is crimes that I have investigated. I've done my best. I got nowhere with Jack the Ripper, and neither
it's a tough one. It's a tough one. A lot of people have got nowhere, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, all the way from, could it be from somebody in Buckingham Palace, right, to something that was just a hoax and made up, or a newspaper story, to a surgeon. It's just a plain criminal, right? Some serial
a woman.
Midwife. Yep. All of these things have been laid out, and we're no closer to the truth. It's an absolutely bizarre case. The facts are the bodies were found. Okay, so we'll get to that, but I want to back up for a second. Your martial arts interest and what you have achieved there is really, really, really cool. Where did that interest start for you?
Well, you could say that my learning martial arts I was kind of in a perfect storm for it, because I grew up in L.A. Chinatown. I mean, it's arguable if I ever actually grew up, but I was, raised there, and just down the street from Bruce Lee's school.
Right.
And my next door neighbor was also a Wing Chun instructor. So I managed to eventually convince Bruce Lee's top student, Sifu Ted Wong, to teach me, after having learned Wing Chun for some years from my next door neighbor,
right,
Sifu George Yao. So it would be, it was just a perfect storm. I was in the right place at the right time, L.A. Chinatown, in the 60s and 70s. And, I was really fortunate to have gone that route. And I met some really terrific people along the way. I've been really fortunate and traveled the world with the martial arts, which also, played into my investigation of Jack the Ripper.
I'm going to stay on Bruce Lee for just a second, so indulge me. Okay, I can't.
Sure.
Like everybody else that is a fan, I don't know how many times I've watched each one of his movies. That I've lost track of that a long time ago. I love it. Yeah. I've got them all on DVD. I've got the collection. I've got the outtakes. I've got the interview. I have everything. And I'm just going to ask this: in your opinion, was there anybody better? Is there anybody better than Bruce Lee?
Well, that's a tough one to answer because it's subjective. You could say, is there a better doctor or a better scientist than Louis Pasteur? And, you're judging someone from 40, 50 years ago by today's standards. I mean, the worst doctor today, or maybe not the worst one, but an average doctor today is light years ahead of Louis Pasteur, because he's had the education and, the training coming from a more advanced point of view.
Right.
So in the martial arts, you could say that Bruce Lee basically invented mixed martial arts, because he was the first one to really get in there and mix different styles to create something very effective.
No doubt.
We can go by the history of the people that have actually interacted with him and who have interacted with others that we know are world champions. For example, let's take Chuck Norris. Everybody likes to make Chuck Norris jokes, but the fact is Chuck Norris in his day was the baddest of the bad and whooped everybody there was to whoop. And Bruce Lee toyed with him. So, by his own admission.
Right.
So we could say that, judging from his performance, there was never, in my opinion, anyone better than him to that date and time. Today, with the advent of the mixed martial arts and the way these young athletes are getting in there from a very young age and mixing the martial arts and getting the practical experience that Bruce couldn't really have gotten, it's very possible that some of these young guys may equal him in terms of who would come out of the room alive, but that doesn't mean that anybody could match him for knowledge, innovation, his ability to reach the masses, his creativity, his fitness level. It would be very hard to point out anyone that would encompass all of those qualities in any way, shape, or form better than Bruce Lee.
Yeah, and I watch all of the movies, the new ones. I do. I'm a big fan. And you go and you watch something like Crouching Tiger or any of the Jet Li stuff, and you watch, and cinematically, it's great and it's beautiful and it's new. I totally agree. You have new technology and the art itself has progressed. I understand all of that. But the quality of what he did still stands on its own today. It's really
unmatched.
Oh, man. And forget about the speed. That was the other thing. His techniques and stuff, but just his sheer speed and the preciseness of it was just fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Wing Chun and in Gung Fu in general, and Jeet Kune Do, Bruce's art, speed is power. A bullet is just a little piece of lead. If I throw it at you, it'll hurt. If I shoot it at you, it'll kill you. The only difference is the speed. Your hand or your foot is much bigger than a bullet, and you obviously can't move it as fast as a bullet, but the potential power as you create more speed in your hands and feet, like what Bruce Lee had, this incredible speed, is going to create incredible power. And so, he was just a little guy, like 5'7", 140 pounds, but he hit like a ton of bricks,
right?
Because he could get that 140 pounds in motion. Just imagine taking a 140-pound brick and dropping it on you from the third story. That's what it would be like to have Bruce Lee hit you.
The comedy side of it, right? That's the other thing, and I really mean this. You can't help but just laugh through an entire Bruce Lee movie, right? Great. And then he whips out the speed and technique, and you just realize that he was a singular guy. And today, I really feel that he completely stands out. Everybody else, to me, is in a tank of molasses. It feels that way when I see the old stuff compared to the new stuff. I'm a big admirer.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. My teacher, Ted Wong, who was Bruce Lee's top student, arguably
yes, he was.
There'd be people that would say he wasn't.
Right.
But he was so much like Bruce Lee. It was like having Bruce Lee at your house.
Yeah.
When you would talk to him, he had that kind of, that if you've heard Bruce Lee's real voice, it was kind of like this Jimmy Cagney, Chinese, British, American accent, the whole, it is like a finger pointing away to the moon. And when my teacher would talk to you, it sounded just like Bruce Lee. When he called you on the phone, you think you're talking to Bruce Lee. And for all practical purposes, you almost were, and just by the exposure I had to him, I used to see Bruce when I was a kid, I used to go peek in the windows when they were training. And, just the exposure I've had to that little bit with Bruce Lee and that exposure I had with my own teacher, my respect for Bruce Lee is through the roof. I mean, you're right. Nobody compares to Bruce Lee. He was in the class of his own and still is.
He was. We'll move on off of Bruce, but I'm just a big Bruce fan, and I just can't help myself, and it's my show. So there you go. But
well, you know what? Before you move off Bruce, I might add that one of my co-authors, Dr. Michael Baden, among all of his other great achievements, took part in the analysis of Bruce Lee's autopsy.
That's right.
And we may go into investigation of Bruce Lee's death.
Love Baden.
My team.
Yeah, love Baden. I love Baden. And you also worked with the Cyril Wecht, too, as well.
Yes, I do.
We'll get into that. So let me back up, though. Have you ever seen, I'm sure you have you ever seen the film clip of Bruce's first match up in San Jose? Have you ever seen that? It's black and white.
Are you talking about when he was sparring my teacher, Ted Wong, and the guy was wearing headgear?
I think so. I didn't know what was Ted.
That's actually my teacher. That's my teacher he's fighting with.
Oh, so that was Ted Wong in that. Okay. But, man,
Ted Wong, yeah.
You watch that clip. And the thing is, when people say, will they sped up the film? Well, you know what? Go watch that. That's two guys at the same speed, and it was just incredible.
No, they had to slow down the speed on that one scene in Enter the Dragon with Bob Wall.
Yep.
When they touch hands in the fighting stance.
Yep.
They had to slow it down, and in order to understand how much it was slowed down, look at the flags blowing in the wind in the background.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah,
and you'll see that they're blowing slow-mo.
Yep. I've watched that so many times. Okay, the audience is like, okay, man, all right, we love Bruce, but and I just love Bruce Lee, man, and I can't believe that you were able to, like you were just saying, peek through the windows and see him practice and instruct. That just must have been incredible.
Oh, yeah. It was, like I said, it was the perfect storm to be a Wing Chun or a Gung Fu man. To grow up in the situation I did and not grasp that, would have been a fatal loss,
Right. Well, now we can phase off of this a little bit, but how do you go from, Black Stallion security and martial arts to Jack the Ripper and Michael Baden? That's a pretty interesting turn.
They all tie together in really weird ways.
Help me out.
Well, how do I go from martial arts to investigation? Well, the logic involved in Wing Chun in particular is a very scientific martial art, and it requires a lot of intuitive thinking, instinctive reaction, and it involves a lot of sort of putting together A and B, A and C, A and D. And when you learn Wing Chun to that extent, to a certain extent, it affects everything you do in life, whatever that is. And in my case, investigation. So one of my friends, he's I'm going to name drop here because I'm proud of him. His name's Zoltan Bathory, and he's the lead guitarist for Five Finger Death Punch, a rock group.
Mm-hmm.
And he trains with me. And Zoltan told me, he's a very intelligent guy, an amazingly intelligent guy. And he said that it took a martial artist with classic Eastern training and with investigative training from the West to solve the Ripper crimes because they are a blend of Eastern and Western thinking and ideology. So the two go hand in hand. As far as Michael Baden, his brother happens to be a Wing Chun enthusiast, and that was kind of a very weak thread that kind of got me in the door that enabled me to get his attention and present my case that I had gathered on Jack the Ripper to him. He was already an expert in the case. He'd been paid by the British government some years back in the 60s to go solve the crimes. He wasn't able to do so, but he retained all the facts. So when I presented him the case that I present in my new book, in our new book, I convinced him. And he said, if your facts can all be substantiated, you've cracked it, son.
Well, let's back up. Yeah. Okay, so let's back up and let's do a Jack the Ripper 101 refresher course for the audience. How many total bodies were found in London?
Well, that is debatable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm of the school of thought that there were 13 and possibly 14. But what are referred to as the canonical murders, meaning generally agreed to by everyone, although everyone doesn't agree on anything in the Ripper world. But the generally agreed upon count is 5, what are known as canonical murders. And but when you hear the evidence that we gathered, and once you figured out who actually did it, and you look at certain things about the dates when the murders were committed and a lot of other factors, you realize that there were 13 and possibly 14, quite possibly 14.
Were they out of those? Okay, let's say 13, or we can go with 14. Pretty much the same. I'm talking about the surgical precision and who they were.
Well, as is typical in many serial killing cases, the MO tends to change as the murder series progresses. The murderers tend to learn, or they tend to, I don't know, I hate to give them any credit and say they get better at their trade, but they learn from their murders and the violence tends to escalate. That's why you'll find that most of your serial killers in history have a previous record of violent crimes that began with cruelty to animals, I'm sure you're aware, fire starting, and escalates to, assault, eventually becomes possibly sexual assault, and eventually leading to murder. And if they're left uncaught for a period of time, the murders sometimes become increasingly brutal, increasingly bizarre in nature.
So the first, with your edition of, there was 5, maybe there was 10, maybe there was 11 or 14. It doesn't matter. With yours, though, the first body was found on April 3rd in 1888. Do any of your additional victims, do they predate that, or are they all after April 3rd?
Yes.
Okay, let's
two predate.
Okay, let's talk about those two. Who are they?
One, her name was Annie Millwood, and the second one was a woman named Ada Wilson. Both of them were attacked, but not murdered. And this is typical, as I was saying before, about how violence escalates.
Right.
The murderers initially, maybe they don't know how to kill someone. They don't know exactly what to do to kill a person. They may not have intended to kill the person at first, and they hunger for more and more violence. And so the violence escalates. So these women were attacked and stabbed, but not killed. Emma Smith, the one you just mentioned, that was killed in April of 1888, wasn't killed on the spot. She was left for dead, but she lived for 4 days.
Right.
Long enough to name her attackers. And she named 3 guys that exactly fit the description of my suspects.
And we'll get to those in a second. Now, with all of your additional victims, do they fall in that same, that Whitechapel area?
Yes. All of them were in Whitechapel and the vicinity. All fall within a 10-minute walk of the central location where one of my suspects lived, and the other 2 were club members. So it's a 10-minute walk, or a 0.6-mile radius, which... there's an agent, FBI agent by the name of Kim Rossmo, who some years back came up with this program called geographic profiling. And he found that most serial murderers commit their crimes in what he calls the serial killer comfort zone. And, areas where they know the terrain and they feel comfortable. And that is absolutely the case with the Ripper killings. They're all in a radius around the International Working Men's Educational Club, where my suspect, one of them lived, and 2 were members.
The victims were all female?
All female.
No males?
No.
Were there any...
Strategically so, and all prostitutes.
Right.
Unfortunates, as they were called back then.
Right. So they were all prostitutes. No men were ever attacked, were they? Or killed, of course, but were no males?
I believe that one man was attacked by my group, but not for any other reason that he was sort of in the way of a victim that they had chosen for that night. And because he was sort of tagging along, I believe that my group beat him to a bloody pulp and stole his watch to make it look like a random attack. But they did it to get him out of the way so that they could attack the woman he was with all night.
And for the audience, I think you can tell Randy's using the word they. Right. So we're going to get to all of that in a second. We're going to head to a break here shortly, Randy. But I want to talk about Sherlock Holmes really quick and how you use that format for the book.
Sure. Well, my 3 co-authors and myself, we're all Sherlock Holmes fans. In fact, all of us were drawn into law enforcement and criminology through our interest in Sherlock Holmes and the Ripper case. So it's kind of a no-brainer for us to do it this way. But let me tell you why. Your audience probably knows who my co-authors are. Dr. Michael Baden, Henry C. Lee, and Cyril Wecht. They've all written a number of true crime novels about their famous cases. They've been involved in, the Kennedy assassination, O.J. Simpson, John Benet Ramsey, Elizabeth Smart kidnapping. The autopsies of Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, Bruce Lee, Prince, Michael Brown, the kid in Ferguson, Hands Up, Don't Shoot.
Right.
These guys are really the biggest time forensic scientists out there. So they've all written these true crime novels in the past. And once they all agreed to take part in my book, which they've refused other very, very popular authors on the Ripper, once they all agreed that they were going to take part with me in a book, it was the general consensus between them that a true crime novel wasn't the best approach to get our theory out in front of the most people possible. They thought, well, the true crime novels they've written haven't really been huge blockbuster sellers. And it wasn't a question of money. They've all got more money than they know what to do with.
Right.
It was more a question of getting that theory out there, getting in front of somebody like yourself. And in order to do that, we brainstormed and we thought, well, how are we going to get more people interested in this book rather than a really dry account of the crimes, step by step of the investigation, which, by the way, we are doing that book too. But let's do something that's going to draw more people in. And of course, it was very natural for us to bring Sherlock Holmes in. Now, you probably know, I'm sure, that Holmes has been brought in against the Ripper in a number of fictional accounts over the years and movies, but never with an eye to presenting an actual working theory with actual evidence. It's always been dramatized, and so is mine. But in our book, Holmes takes the reader by the hand, and Watson, and guides him through our actual investigation, presenting the actual facts, and doing so in hopefully an entertaining manner that would draw in people that weren't necessarily interested in the Ripper, but were more Sherlock Holmes fans. It may be people that are interested in the Ripper, but are tired of these true account type dry books and wanted something maybe a little different. So we presented it, this way, and hopefully it seems like people are receiving it well. And I think it's a way of getting some younger people interested in the case, and because the Sherlock Holmes TV shows all have a big following, and people are wild about, say, Benedict Cumberbatch or the Robert Downey Jr. films, even the TV show where Lucy Liu is Dr. Watson.
Right. Yeah, Benedict.
So by doing that,
Benedict Cumberbatch is that's a pretty good series. It's actually done really well.
Yeah, it's terrific. And so, with that interest, kind of renewed interest in Sherlock Holmes, we thought, let's do it this way. So I had to go to work and research. I mean, I've read all the Holmes stories multiple times through my life, but I had to reread them all and take note of the Old English, the terms that were used back then, the style of writing of Arthur Conan Doyle, and I did my best to mimic that. But, my intention was never to be another Holmes novel to match Doyle. It was really to present the case in an entertaining manner.
Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Randy Williams. We're talking about his new book, which is Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. It's called Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror. This is Fade to Black. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. And more with Randy right after this. I'm going to talk. I got more Baden and Cyril Wecht questions, too. We'll do that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas. Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
You're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com. Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly Ancient Life Oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go back, Lee Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. And thank you for spending your Halloween evening here with us. Our guest tonight, author Randy Williams. And we're discussing his new book, which is Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror. And it's about Jack the Ripper. And now, this is what's interesting for me, Randy, is Baden and Wecht. I'm fans of the both of them. We all are. But the two of them also have butted heads over the years. Did you get them on the same page for the book?
Absolutely. There were just some minor details that maybe they might have disagreed upon, but they were sorted out, and, it wasn't anything major.
Oh, man, I wanted mud. You were supposed to bring me some mud. All right, well, let me ask.
Well, I got mud, but not with them, not with those guys. No.
So how did you and how did they collect the evidence and start to look at the forensic side of this? Because that's what they do. They're both forensic pathologists, and two of the absolute, without question, two of the best on the planet. How did you assemble the forensic side?
Well, what I first had to do was win over Dr. Michael Baden. He was the initial contact. I was thrown together with him through a case he was working on here in northeastern Pennsylvania of a serial killer in my area. Mm-hmm. And I was in the courtroom with him. And when I happened to be friends with the district attorney of our county. And what happened was in the trial, the judge wrongfully excluded Baden from the courtroom. He said, Baden, you're going to testify today, so you can't hear the testimony. And so he basically kicked him out of the courtroom. So my friend, that is the district attorney, said, hey, Randy, would you mind keeping Dr. Baden company for a while, while he's waiting? So I took him into the kind of the war room, and we sat there for 3 hours, and I had his ear for 3 hours. Well, initially, we talked Wing Chun because his brother happens to be a big martial arts fan of the same style that I teach and knew who I was. We contacted his brother, and his brother was, oh, Randy Williams. I was kind of amazed his brother would even care. But that kind of got me his ear. And after he spent about an hour showing me kind of gross pictures of different autopsies and things and telling me about some of his famous cases, I thought, what the heck? Let me bounce this off him. So I said, Dr. B, if I told you that I had solved the Jack the Ripper murders, what would you say? And he said, well, Randy, I'm aware of your history and your background in the martial arts and what you've done there. And so if it was anyone else, I'd probably say, yeah, no. But I'll give you 5 minutes. Let's hear it. And so I thought, all right, here it is. So I presented him my case.
What was your pitch?
Super informed.
Okay, so what was your pitch?
Well, he said, the first thing he said to me is, who was Jack the Ripper? And I said, well, first of all, Dr. B, it was more than one person. It was 3 people, funded and motivated by a 4th. And he said, all right, you got my attention. Who was it? Who was your main Ripper? And I said, Louis Diemschutz. And he says, Louis Diemschutz, you mean the guy who found Elizabeth Stride's body in front of the International Working Men's Educational Club on the night of the double event, the first of the 2 murders?
Right.
And I said, yeah, yeah, him. He goes, all right, you're going to really have to convince me on that, because he was with the police when the second murder took place in Mitre Square, half a mile away. And I said, yes, I can, because he had 2 accomplices. And he said, all right, who were they? And I named the names, Samuel Friedman and Isaac Kozabrodsky. And he said, I have no idea who those people are. And I said, well, you probably do, but they're just footnotes in the case. But once I explain it to you, you'll understand why. And I did. And he said, well, this is starting to make a lot of sense. But how do you reckon this was done? And then I explained to him my timeline for the double event. Your listeners probably know that's the night that Jack the Ripper killed 2 women.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to him how Louis Diemschutz managed to convince the police that he was absolutely above suspicion, because he was with the police while the second murder took place. You see, his accomplices performed the second murder when he knew he would be with the police after pretending to find the body of their first victim. At the time, no one suspected the Ripper was more than one person, and most people haven't since. So because he was sitting with the police pretending to have found the first body, shaking and quaking with fake fear, while the second murder took place, he absolutely couldn't have killed the first girl. And because the second woman was killed in the way described by the Saucy Jackie postcard that warned the police of 2 murders that night,
right,
even to the extent of having her ear clipped off, they thought, well, this is definitely the Ripper that did them both, and Diemschutz couldn't have done the second murder. Therefore, he didn't do the first one, and he was discounted summarily as a suspect. But I unraveled how exactly he did it with accomplices. And once I showed Dr. Baden what I had gathered, how they did it, and the timeline, I got his ear, and then I just kept showing him the rest of my evidence, after which he said, well, we've got to get Cyril and Henry involved.
And how did Wecht, did you do the same pitch with him?
Yeah, I didn't have to do exactly the same way, because what happened was that Dr. Baden said, all right, listen, I'm busy with this case I'm on right now.
Right.
I got to fly out right after the trial. He says, give me your case notes. Send them to me immediately. I'm going to go over your case notes, and if you're fact-finding, if I can substantiate your evidence, he says, I'm going to go over with a fine-tooth comb. So he says, if I can substantiate your evidence, I believe you've cracked this case. After, I'm putting it in a nutshell, I spent 2 hours presenting my case to him.
Right.
And he says, if everything you're telling me can be substantiated, this is the biggest thing ever, and we're going to crack this case for the public. And he says, and I'm going to get Cyril and Henry involved, but I'm not going to tell them about this until I've double-checked everything you're telling me. So, of course, I went home and, put together, my case was already put together, so basically just had to get it over to him. And it didn't take him more than a few days to get back to me. He called me on the phone, never forget it. And he says, son, you've cracked it. You've absolutely cracked the case. Now we're going to get Cyril and Henry into this, and we're going to bring this to the world's attention.
Now we're dealing with a conspiracy, right? Not a single killer. That's the first thing. But the next thing that comes to mind, and I've got a list of questions ready to go, not written, but on my brain, is this. They're in a conspiracy such as this, where the crimes needed to be committed the same. Now we're talking about planning and how
a lot of planning.
Yeah, a lot of planning, and how these victims were going to be killed, and they needed to be similar enough that the police and the detectives and everybody else in Scotland Yard is going to assume that it was just one killer doing everything with one mindset, right? Right? So
yes, and you got to understand that the forensics weren't like they are today, so they never dreamed that forensic scientists would figure out that there were two knives used in some of the killings, one in others, and that the knife lengths would be calculated, and that, in some cases, the handedness, left or right, of the killer might be calculated. That's kind of junk science, according to my co-authors, but people have assigned left-handedness to the killer in one case. So, they didn't really have to strive to make MOs the same because, in fact, the MOs were the same. It was always the three guys committing the killings together, except the second of the double event where one guy was missing.
Now, then the next thing, if this is you're dealing with some sick minds here. Was there another aside from just killing? What was the motive? Was it some kind of ritual? Was there something else more sinister besides just killing prostitutes?
Absolutely. Well, it was race, religion, and politics, not necessarily in that order. There were terror attacks, similar to what ISIS does today. They were absolutely attacks on capitalism and Christianity, which are the greatest enemies of the anarchist cause. My men were members of an anarchist club, which, their main mission in life was to bring down the British Empire any way possible. And so the crimes were absolutely targeting race, were actually race, religion, and politically motivated, without question. And what happened was they decided to target prostitutes because it was salacious. Sex sells. You even today, if you pick up the newspaper and you see something about, the Long Island serial killer, it attracts the attention. And in the prurient society, Victorian England, it was something very salacious that would grab headlines, would grab people's attention. Today, ISIS uses these high-tech, high-def videos of them killing people that they consider martyrs, dying for their cause, and they do that for sort of a propaganda purpose for their cause, but rather than just randomly mowing down a crowd of people in Nice or New York City, what they did was they handpicked prostitutes, not because they hated prostitutes per se. According to Karl Marx, from dating back from 1844, his treatise he did on economics and philosophy, he names Christianity and capitalism as the greatest enemies of his cause, and he is very, very adamantly against prostitution. He considers prostitution the absolute most egregious exploitation of human beings possible. So he doesn't hate prostitutes, he hates prostitution. And I think that they looked at the targeting of prostitutes as a way of, somebody's going to have to die in this war, and it's not going to be us. They thought, you guys are martyrs. In fact, in their own club newspaper, they referred to the victims as martyrs, meaning they died for their cause, their religious cause. The girls were all Christians, by the way. But I believe that they chose the prostitutes for that salacious reason, and they thought, somebody's going to die in this war. If you look at Vietnam, look how many Americans died in Vietnam to gain, I don't know, really not much. But in this war, the casualties were going to be prostitutes. But in the end, prostitutes benefited. Thousands of prostitutes. I hate to give these guys any credit, but Queen Victoria was forced to clean up Whitechapel and help the Jews, who were working under this, what they called the sweating system. It was almost a slavery of Jews. And the prostitutes that existed in Whitechapel, she had to clean that up because the world's attention was now brought to this dirty underbelly of England. They wanted to bring the world's attention to this impoverished, diseased area of London, just miles from Buckingham Palace. Instead of people thinking of palaces and polo games and fountains and tea and crumpets, people were reading about poverty and homelessness and disease and prostitution and crime and murder in Whitechapel, on the British Empire where the sun never sets. So they used this as a propaganda tool.
Yeah, there's I can't imagine what the real conditions were in Whitechapel back then. Most today, even though it's just a little over 100 years ago, we don't have any concept of what it was like there, because there were refugees and immigrants from all over the world that were forced to live there. It was way overpopulated. The economic conditions there, everybody, it was a slum, slave labor, like you're saying. It was diseased. It was dirty. There were so many prostitutes and brothels there, and crime, and just it was a very, very, very dark place to live. Yeah,
the worst you could imagine.
It was absolutely just like that. And so I agree with you. If you're going to go and try to change things, or bring publicity to this, or amplify and confirm everybody's perceptions of Whitechapel, right? The disease, the crime, the prostitution, the gambling, all of the the economic conditions. Well, then why not string together a bunch of prostitutes that are being murdered there, and it proves to everybody around the perceptions of Whitechapel that it was just...
Oh, the whole world was talking about Whitechapel. The whole world was talking about it.
They absolutely were. It was a big deal back then. And now, okay, so let me back up. That kind of sets the scene for everybody on what was going on with these murders. But with the 3 plus 1 that you have named, did any of them kill before? I mean, just going out and starting to go on a killing spree is one thing, but did they have criminal backgrounds? Did they ever murder anybody before?
Well, remember that the violence escalated, but I did uncover that one of my suspects, Samuel Friedman, had a rape conviction in 1886, 2 years before the Ripper killings. He's one of the guys that supposedly found the body of Liz Stride with Deemschutz. He had a rape conviction, and I also subsequently found burglary and petty theft conviction for him as well. Now, again, I believe that the violence escalated. They started with attacking the women, and it escalated as crime went on. Now, the 3 of my suspects, along with one of their wife, were arrested for a violent crime 6 months after the double event, which had some amazing coincidences with the double event that I'd like to explain to your listeners, whether it's now or later. But to answer your initial question, the only one that I could find actual criminal record for is Samuel Friedman with a rape conviction. But that's very pertinent, because if you think about a guy who's raped a woman in 1886, it's not that far a cry to see that he could escalate. Furthermore, in the 1880s in England, if you would imagine, think about the 70s, 80s, maybe even today in America, some women are reluctant to report a rape because they a lot of times get accused of sort of being at fault. You were wearing a miniskirt, you asked for it. Or you went to his hotel room, right. What did you think Mike Tyson was going to do? Right. And so, a lot of women are reluctant even now. So imagine in that society in Victorian England, that prudish society, for a rape conviction to be obtained in 1886, it had to be a very sort of egregious offense. There had to be some serious violence, or it had to be against someone of importance. It had to be maybe involving a minor. There had to be some extenuating circumstances to that for that conviction to be obtained. And so we know that one of my guys, at minimum, had this record. Now, the other 2, one was very, very young, and the other came from Russia not long before the crimes occurred. So he could very well have committed murders in his own country.
Now, didn't Emma Smith, she said that you're going to have to help me out here. She was attacked by a group too as well, and that it was more than one. What were the ages? I think where I'm going to go with this in a second. What were the ages of?
Sir.
Okay, what were the ages of your 4?
She said one guy that punched me in the eye was probably 40, and then he stood guard, which fits the MO of the other crimes as well. She said the main guy that seemed to be the leader of the group was probably 26 to 30. And she said the one that was the most brutal, the one that raped me, the one that shoved some object into my vagina, which eventually caused her death of peritonitis, was, she said, around 19.
A teenager.
Now, at that time, teenager. Now, at that time, Louis Diemschutz, the leader of the group, was 26 or 27 years old. Samuel Friedman was 41 or 42, and Isaac Kozabrodsky was 17 or 18 at that time.
So now, is this part of, when Baden is looking at this, and Wecht, Michael, Ciro, and Henry too as well, when they look at this, is this part of assembling the evidence together? Because this is corroborating what you are bringing forward, and it seems pretty damning to me because she was a witness and a victim.
Absolutely. And it fits with the pattern. I mean, historically, if you look at crimes that were committed by multiple killers, there have been a number of crimes, serial murders committed by multiple killers through the years. And even maybe the Long Island serial killer who we haven't caught yet, or they think they might have, could have been a multiple killer situation. But, they had the Chicago Rippers, the Hillside Stranglers, Bono and Bianchi. There was Shermantine and Herzog, the Gallegos, the couple, the Fall River, Massachusetts cult, and in the news just recently, this Russian cannibal couple. It's historically, there have been many groups that have committed murders together. And in every case, the murders, the violence escalates, and they learn as they go. In this case, some people think the Ripper had to have been a doctor.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. I live in rural Pennsylvania, and I have friends here that had never graduated high school, but they can gut a deer without spilling hardly any blood and without damaging an organ. And they can get that thing cleaned out in minutes.
Experts with
and
a
these
knife.
Guys
Experts. Yeah.
Right. But how did they learn? They learned by doing. They did it since they were young. They started in their teens. And by the time they get to their 9th, 10th deer, they're practically a surgeon in that respect. I mean, not a surgeon, but that kind of surgical precision. So to me and to my doctors, it means nothing. None of them believed that the Ripper necessarily had to have surgical background. They believed that from looking at the evidence from the very first attack and the progression through to the 13th, you can see this guy or guys were learning as they went and learning where the organs were, learning how to remove the organs without damaging them. I've got a buddy here that can do that with a deer. I mean, it's very normal here in Northeast Pennsylvania for guys to know how to do that. And there's no telling that my guys weren't hunters in their own countries.
What kind of time spanned for these crimes, the murders?
3 years short of about 2 days.
And that's pretty scary. That is a lot of terror for even Whitechapel to go through.
Oh, yeah. Now, it was, the dates of the murders were very significant. If you look at the way ISIS does things, for example, today, Halloween attack, they pick significant dates for their attacks a lot of times. And my guys absolutely did pick significant dates for their crimes. And of these 13 murders, and maybe 14, 13 of the 14 were committed on special days of the Eastern liturgical faith, which is the one practiced in Russia, which is where my guys come from.
Right.
They're days that celebrate Mother Mary, Mary Theotokos, which is the Greek name for Mother Mary. Now, these days that the murders were all committed on were Theotokos days. And there are only 12 Theotokos days in a year. So I have a friend who's a math professor, and I approached him and I said, hey, Tony, if I gave you 13 murders that took place over a 3-year span, almost to the day, 2 of them happened on the same day a year apart, and I told you that every one of them took place on a Theotokos day, of which there are only 12 in a year, what would the odds be against that being coincidental? And after a little bit of time calculating, he said to me, that number doesn't have a name, but it's represented by a 7 followed by 15 zeros to 1 against it being coincidental. Therefore, we can absolutely, with complete certainty, say it was not a coincidence. So, all of those murders and attacks took place on these Theotokos days, except one. And there are other amazing coincidences, other days that were significant, or those same days were significant in other ways as well.
How?
So,
No, go ahead.
Well, if you look at the fact that they were doing these attacks on days that were dedicated in the Eastern Liturgical Bible to Mother Mary, you can see that it's absolutely an attack on Christianity as well as an attack on capitalism or, the British government. They were trying to bring down the British government. That was their club's motto, actually, and they were attacking Christianity. They absolutely chose Theotokos days to commit their crimes. In fact, they ran out of Theotokos days because there was only 12 in a year, so they had to do one of them on September 8th, again, on the same day, a year apart, because they ran out of Theotokos days.
Now, why didn't the Metropolitan Police figure that out? I mean,
You know what? I don't know. I really don't know. I really couldn't tell you, other than the fact that anybody that practiced Eastern liturgical Christianity probably didn't speak English or wasn't prepared to go and help the police, or didn't see the connection. I mean, I didn't see it. I had to, it took almost a computer to calculate that, to find that out. And I just think that it's really hard. A lot of people ask me a question, Jimmy. A lot of people say, geez, when I look at all your evidence and see what you gathered and everything you found, why didn't somebody else figure this out before you? And you know what? I can't really answer that. I don't know why they didn't, because to me it seems very basic, but it took me 40 years.
Okay, let's, I got to take a break right here, but when we come back, I want to go through each victim and how they were killed, and the similarities between those. Also, some of the additional victims that may be outside of the original 5, 11, 13, or 14 that were killed, and the style of what is going on here. It's Halloween, so let's talk about knives and bodies, and we'll do all of that when we come back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Randy Williams, and we're talking about his new book, which is called Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror. And as I am trying to dial up, hold on for a second, I have the wrong mouse in my hand. There is an explanation for that, Randy. I'll tell you all about it when we come back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Happy Halloween, everybody. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously. Go Beckley Tappy.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRAradio.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Happy Halloween, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Very easy to do. Come and hang out with the conversation going on Twitter. Hashtag F2B or any of the chat rooms. They're both open, live, and active, as they always are. Our guest tonight, Randy Williams. We're discussing his new books on this Halloween called Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror, which is Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper and those series of crimes that happened in Whitechapel back in 1888 through 1891. And I wanted to ask, how was each victim killed?
Well, you know, it varied. Like I said, the violence escalated from Annie Millwood, who was basically stabbed, you know, in the buttocks. You know, some guy supposedly came out of a crowd, stabbed her. A bunch of times in the, you know, nobody knows the exact number of wounds, but she was stabbed all around the legs and buttocks. And she died, oddly, 10 days later, but supposedly not related to this stabbing. I find it kind of hard to believe, but that's what the doctors decided. You know, then it went to this, you know, Ada Wilson, and Ada Wilson was stabbed twice in the throat, which one would think that was an attempt to kill her, not just to assault her. So when we look at Ada Wilson stabbed twice in the throat, I think they were trying to kill her. But we get into this kind of a strange area with the killings of they're mutating into what looks like what's called a shechita, which is a ritual kosher killing that's still practiced to this very day by kosher butchers called shochet. And there's a method of killing an animal in such a way that first, the blood pressure is relieved by a small cut on one side of the neck, and then the rest of the cut is made across the neck in a second slice that ends the life quickly, and the blood is drained into a cup called a clicherate. When we look at some of the murders, Polly Nichols, for example, one of the canonicals, she had 2 cuts across her throat. One was a short one, about an inch below her jaw, and then the other one was 4 inches and ran right across the neck. Annie Chapman had 2 distinct clean cuts on the left side of her spine. Liz Stride, one of the double event murders, there was a clean cut incision on her neck, 6 inches in length, and then, another one a half inch higher. You have Catherine Eddowes, her throat was cut across to the extent of about 6 or 7 inches. And a superficial cut, though, commenced a half an inch or an inch and a half below the other one. So these all fit in with this idea of this kosher killing. Mary Kelly as well. The neck was cut through the skin right down to the vertebrae of her neck, and you could see more than one cut. Alice McKenzie had 2 jagged wounds on the left side of her neck that were no longer than 4 inches each. Frances Coles also had the 2-cut signature on her neck. So, you know, there's this type of killing that's a ritual kosher killing, which these fit very closely into that. And in fact, if you look at Polly Nichols that I mentioned before, the first, you know, canonical killing everyone agrees on, there was a remarkable absence of blood on her clothing from having her throat cut. Where did the blood go? Never was accounted for.
Was it the same thing?
This manner that.
Yeah, I want to say on the blood aspect, with the rest of the victims, and with that type of, you know, the cutting of the neck or so, you know, where did all the blood go with everybody else? Was it at the scene?
Well, not always. There was a distinct shortage of blood at, for example, Liz Stride's scene. The doctor said there was only enough blood there. Some of it ran down the gutter, all right. But the doctor said, there was only about enough blood there to fill a wine glass, which Dr. Wecht and Baden say, no, that's not enough blood. Where's the rest of the blood?
Right.
They've looked at all the coroner's reports, and they're saying, where's the blood, Randy? Where's the blood? You got to figure this out. Where's the blood? And that's what led me to this Shechita kosher killing. Because when they do this ritual killing, they hold a cup underneath the wound to catch the blood. And sometimes they'll be a couple of guys taking part, and they're called Cohens. And these guys will fill one cup, hand it off to the next guy, and get another cup, and stop the blood from hitting the ground. And they'll collect the blood to be used for some ritual purpose. So it looks like there's a shortage of blood in some of these cases, and this would kind of account for that. Why? And if you look at the cuts on the women's necks, they fit with this kosher killing idea of a short cut followed by a long cut.
Now, there's with any of them, draining the blood, that's going to kill somebody. Okay, I understand that. With any of the victims, did they have any other wounds that could have killed them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as the killings progressed, we get to, the killing of Annie Chapman, the evisceration, the taking away of organs, the taking away of the uterus of Catherine Eddowes, the taking out of the heart, the missing uterus, the missing heart of Mary Kelly. And so,
no, I understand. Well, I understand. I'm sorry. I sound like I'm really rude in interrupting you. I don't want to interrupt. My understanding with that is that was after they died. So what I'm suggesting here is, did anybody, die of, a blow to the head or something like that before the organs were removed and everything else? Or did everybody die silently from the draining of blood and then everything else happened?
The throat cutting.
Yes.
Right. What they did was they disabled the victim. They silenced her because there were 3 guys. So we've even figured out exactly how they did it, a sort of half Nelson hold with the hand over the mouth to silence the victim and pull her head back while the other one cut the throat and held the cup. And that's where they would die and be silenced. And once you cut that throat, the vocal cords are now severed.
Right.
And so they're silent. And then the rest of the work, I should call it work, but the rest of the crime would be committed with the victim being silent and relatively unable to fight back. Maybe not dead, maybe dying, but certainly the blood flow staunched and the victim helpless.
Nobody heard anything, right? There was nothing. All of the. Okay, well,
some people heard something.
What did they hear?
Well, for example, the best witness of all in my book is a guy called Israel Schwartz, a Jewish man who lived just doors down from the International Working Men's Club. He stumbled upon the attack taking place. He identified a guy that exactly matches Louis Diemschutz's description, attacking a woman. And when he went to assist, he said a second man came from across the street. This guy was stood across the street guarding, smoking a pipe, and came and chased them away after having been called a Jewish man's name. He identified the two guys as having been Jewish. He heard them exchange the name Lipsky, which I believe was a code word because Lipsky was kind of a guy that was being railroaded, in their opinion, by the Gentiles for a murder against a Gentile woman that they believed he was innocent of. And so I think they held his name up, Lipsky, kind of as, saying, Che, or saying, Batista, or something, when you're committing some sort of a crime in the name of a cause. And so, or the way the guys shout in these ISIS killings, what they all shout before they do it.
Right.
So in that manner, they shouted out a Jewish man's name who was in the news at the time as having been railroaded by the Gentiles. So we have Israel Schwartz, who actually saw the thing taking place. We have, there was a woman who lived above the second murder at Mitre Square who claims to have heard Catherine Eddowes talking and then shouting something before the murder took place in Mitre Square. So there were some things heard and seen, certainly, but no one actually heard the victim screaming. Other than, I take that back. There was a woman who lived in the same building as Mary Kelly, who said she heard a cry of "Oh, murder!" coming from Mary Kelly's room.
The men's club that we're talking about here, we brought it up a few times. We need to kind of back up and explain to the audience what we're talking about here.
Okay. This men's club, that the only reason we know about it is because a murder took place outside it. It was a strategic piece of propaganda, in my opinion. But it was called the International Working Men's Educational Club. And it was anything but an educational club. It was a socialist club with branches in different cities around the world whose main agenda was to destroy the British Empire, to destroy what was called the sweating system, which was this sort of oppression against Jewish workers. They basically were forced to work in slave conditions, slave wages, and were forced to live in Whitechapel, the worst area of London. And the International Working Men's Educational Club, which had nothing to do with education, was purely a socialist anarchist club, which was designed for guys to get together and sort of brainstorm different ways to bring down the British government. Louis Diemschutz, my lead suspect, was the steward, or practically the president, so to speak, of that club. And he found, quote unquote, the body of Elizabeth Stride outside that club the night of the double event. So he was basically committing an act in order to, it was for propaganda purposes. He wanted to bring the world's attention to the International Working Men's Club. And indeed, the only reason you and I are talking about it today is because of the Ripper killings, or none of us would know it even existed. So it was very effective. In their own club newspaper, the day after the double event, Diemschutz and company were out there posing for pictures. Diemschutz reenacted his quote-unquote finding of the body for British newspapers, and he posed for them, and he charged them admission to come in and look at the crime scene. And he gloated in his own newspaper in Hebrew, he gloated in his own newspaper that these idiots, Gentiles, were actually funding the operation that would bring their country down by paying him to reenact the murders for them.
What about the other three? Were they also members?
Yes. We have, first of all, the other two that committed the murders, Kozabrodsky and Friedman, were club members. And the man who I believe funded it, organized it, brainstormed it, funded it, put Diemschutz in place as the steward of the club, was a Prince Peter Kropotkin, who was one of the great anarchist thinkers of the 1800s. Kropotkin, I believe he was the mastermind, really, and he was the one that opened the club and put Diemschutz in place. He's also the one that extracted Diemschutz from England when it got too hot. He came to the club, made an appearance with Stepniak, a famous Russian playwright and author who was himself a knife murderer, who was expelled from Russia for the knife murder of the head of the Russian secret police a few years before. He would travel around with Kropotkin doing socialist speeches. Kropotkin excised Diemschutz from the premises. But so he wasn't just a club member; he was actually the founder of the club.
Amazing. And what about Diemschutz and all of them? Did they start to enjoy this? The killing. I mean, they continued for years.
Yeah, I think Kozubrodsky did. I think Kozubrodsky was a young, very malleable, easily influenced young man who followed Diemschutz around as the club steward, and sort of like a lapdog, and would do whatever he said. And I think he's the one that began to enjoy the work. He was the one that brutalized Emma Smith by her testimony. The young one was the one that raped her and brutalized her.
Right.
And I think he's the one that did the most brutal of the killings. And he, in fact, was the one that did the majority of the second murder in Mitre Square of Catherine Eddowes, where he carved his initials, IMK, into her face 3 times.
And now back to Sherlock Holmes. So in the way that you've written this and fictionalized this, was there an aha moment for Holmes as he's starting to put this, as Sherlock always did, right?
Yes.
Okay. What was that?
Absolutely there is.
Yeah, what was the aha moment?
The moment was when, after these 3 men were arrested for a violent crime that took place with 4 amazing coincidences with the Ripper murders at the double event, the same guys and the wife of Diemschutz that found the body of Elizabeth Stride, supposedly, were involved in this other violent crime, and Holmes reads about it and sees, wait a minute, they attacked a guy who lived at Goulston Street, which was where the Goulston Street graffito was left. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Israel Sunshine. They attacked him. They committed they marched in front of the church of their worst enemy, Chief Rabbi Dr. Adler, whose church was at Mitre Square. They marched back, assaulted Sunshine, and then assault. When the police came, they dragged a policeman to the exact spot where Stride's body had been found by them and beat him to a bloody pulp with sticks. And Diemschutz kicked him in the leg, nearly broke his leg. And they were all arrested. When they were arrested, Diemschutz's wife came out of the house and started beating on the police with a stick, and she was arrested. So Holmes goes, well, this is pretty weird, because Diemschutz's statement when he found the body, he said he didn't want to say anything when he came into the house because he was worried. His wife had a very delicate constitution, and she was the type of woman that would be very easily traumatized by the finding of a drunk or dead woman outside the club, drunk even. And here's this hellion that comes out and starts beating the police when they arrest her husband for beating up a policeman. So he says, this is not consistent. And then he starts looking at Diemschutz's statements, which I did, and we see that Diemschutz had 2 pieces of what are called guilty knowledge. In the investigative field, we have this term we call guilty knowledge, meaning a person having knowledge that they couldn't possibly have unless they were involved or knew someone who was directly involved in the crime, because certain details of the crime are held back by police. So Diemschutz had 2 pieces of guilty knowledge, and Kozubrodsky had a piece of guilty knowledge he couldn't possibly have had without involvement or knowing someone who was involved. And when Holmes susses exactly what I finally figured out after I read his statements 1,000 times over and not seen it, Holmes goes, aha, and figures it out. And then the evidence starts falling from the trees because it's low-hanging fruit. When you start looking at these guys who nobody ever really seriously looked at, especially Friedman and Kozubrodsky, and you find Friedman has a rape conviction, you start looking at these guys, the evidence just starts falling into your lap, and you look like a good detective, at least to some people, but actually, it's low-hanging fruit. It's there for the picking because no one's ever looked at it before.
Were the Metropolitan Police just bumbling idiots?
No, not at all. No, but they didn't have the luxury of 150 years of forensic science and case history to go by.
Right.
I mean, this is the first guy that ever inserted himself into an investigation. I mean, many have done it since. I mean, look at Wayne Williams, the Atlanta child murderer.
Right.
How he inserted himself into the investigation. Or if you look at Edmund Kemper, Ted Bundy, quite a number of these guys were either inserted themselves into the investigation, or they somehow were spoken to early in the case and discounted, like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, or BTK inserted himself in the investigation.
Sure.
John Wayne Gacy.
Right.
Well, the Ripper was the first guy to do it. So, of course, the cops had no case history to go by that anyone would be audacious enough to insert themselves into the investigation by finding a body. But, of course, many, many, many have done it since. He may have been the first to ever do it. So they weren't bumbling idiots. They just didn't have the luxury that we have today of being able to look at hundreds, if not thousands, of murder cases and drawing these parallels between the different killings and how the murderers behaved, what they did before, during, and after the crimes. We have all this data now, that we can go by that they didn't have.
Now, what about, I want to stay on all of this, but there's a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. One of them was, Holmes, the serial killer here in the States, that he was Jack the Ripper. How did Sherlock take Holmes off the list?
Well, first of all, he wasn't a factor at that time, even, thought about. But, I'm not here to shoot down anybody's theory. I'm not here to, to make anyone else look bad or try to discount anyone else's theory. I can tell you this: the evidence takes us to Louis Diemschutz and Company, does not take us to Holmes. I mean, I don't want to single out any one person suspect, but let's look at it this way. If we look at eyewitness statements about the Ripper, he was absolutely at least two Jewish men, because Israel Schwartz stumbled upon the murder taking place of Liz Stride in front of the IWMEC. He said they were Jewish. He was Jewish. He was a Hungarian Jew. Now, you might think that a Gentile could mistake a Jew with someone else. But when you talk about a Jewish man stumbling upon the crime and saying they were two Jewish guys, that lends a lot of credibility to his statement. That automatically discounts anybody who's being pointed at as a suspect who is not Jewish. It automatically knocks half the players out of the game, because what happens a lot of times with the evidence, a lot of the Ripper theorists have to ignore certain bits of evidence because it doesn't fit their theory. So they'll say, well, no, another attack took place in front of the club 10 minutes before the real killing.
Right.
And that was the Jews that were doing that. And then this was a different thing, or they'll be forced to discount bits of eyewitness testimony or factoids because it doesn't fit their theory of the crime. So we're going to say, well, that's irrelevant. But in my case, I use all the evidence, and why it fits? Because they did it, because they absolutely did it. And so I don't want to sit here and say, well, this guy's wrong or that guy's wrong. That's up to them to present their cases and convince the world that they're right. But I will say that you'd have to ask, was Holmes even in London? Is there definitive evidence that ties him to London? Could he possibly be mistaken as an American for a Jew? Did he have an accomplice that was Jewish? Do we have evidence of that? I mean, my guys are tied directly with the body and directly with 3 crime scenes, but by their subsequent violent crime. They're tied to Mitre Square, the club, and the Goulston Street graffito by their subsequent violent crime 6 months later. So, I mean, you have to, if you're going to present your case, I mean, this guy can present his case, these guys can present their cases. You have to have some evidence. And, I don't know if they have, I'm not here to discount anyone else's case. I'm just making my case.
What about the possibility of the royal family in Buckingham Palace?
No evidence. People used to say the Duke of Clarence, Prince Albert Victor, was the Ripper. And where that came from was the fact that he was homosexual, and he was busted in this, what was called the Clarence, I think it was, not the Clarence Street, the Cleveland Street scandal, which was a homosexual brothel. And he was, there when they busted it. And it was covered up as best it could be covered, but it came out eventually. And people didn't understand back then, homosexuality. They looked at it and, well, I don't have to tell you. So they thought, well, he's a pervert, he's a deviant, or whatever they would have thought back then. And what we do know is that gay men don't kill women. Gay men kill men. John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer. Besides that, it's been proven over, time and time again, that Prince Edward Albert was out of the country during some of the murders. But it's this pervasive rumor that just won't go away. But oddly, there is a royal connection because Kropotkin that I described to you earlier, Prince Peter Kropotkin, was a member of the Russian aristocracy. He was a royal. He was a prince in Russia, though.
And what about eliminating surgeons and doctors? Was there ever a suspect?
Well, yeah, they've had Ostrog that was a doctor. They had this quack doctor called Tumblety, who was also gay, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only mentioning that not to disparage, I'm mentioning it because we know that gay men don't serial murder women. They just don't. There's no historical background to that. There were probably a dozen other people. John Williams was a surgeon, was a doctor that worked at the Whitechapel Clinic, and he used to help out the women with sexually transmitted diseases and things. And he became a suspect later on in the game because he was a doctor and because he knew a lot of the victims because of the nature of his work in Whitechapel, which is a small area. And he's treating the prostitutes for sexually transmitted diseases. So naturally, he's going to come into contact. But I summarily discounted him as a suspect after we looked at him hard. But my doctors are of the opinion that it doesn't take any surgical skill to do what the Ripper did. It just takes practice.
Now, we're going to head towards a break here. I wanted to ask you really quick, did they ever find a murder weapon?
No. Well, yes. No. Here's what happened. Samuel Friedman, who I mentioned, the guy with the rape conviction.
Right.
He lived in Weaver Street. And if you drew a beeline from Mitre Square, where the second double event murder took place, to Weaver Street, just around the corner from his house, Police Constable Drage found a knife, a bloody knife wrapped in a cloth, but it didn't look like the type of knife that they thought would have committed the murder. In my opinion, it could have been what they call a shalef knife, which is the Jewish ritual killing knife, because it looks kind of like a sharp butter knife, rounded tip.
Mm-hmm.
Now, PC Drage found a bloody knife wrapped in cloth just around the corner from Samuel Friedman's house. I believe that after the double event, he took his knife and he ran with it, and it was either used as a decoy to make it look like the Ripper ran away from the club, or it was actually just, purposely dumped because he didn't want to have it in his hand. But in any case, there was such a knife found by PC Drage. So was it the knife? We don't know. I'd love to have my hands on that knife for DNA purposes. But the knife that's described as having been found by Drage fits the description of the shalef, the Jewish ritual kosher slaughter knife.
Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight on this Halloween evening, author Randy Williams. We're talking about his new book, Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Randy right after this short break. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com. Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. Happy Halloween. Our guest tonight, Randy Williams. We're discussing his new book, Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror, about Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. And now, Randy, what I want to try to spend some time on one of the more fascinating aspects of the case, and that is the letters, not all of them, but the famous letters, the Boss letter, Saucy Jackie, right, and of course the From Hell letter, which we've all seen. Yeah. Oh, it's just absolutely blood curdling, man. That, you know, it's just crazy. Yeah. So let's start with some of that. Oh, somebody Dew Sky just popped up in Twitter and said, "What about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle being Jack the Ripper?"
Ninja, please.
You gotta love it, though. You gotta love it. You never know, and especially with our audience. But great question. Let's talk about these letters. Let's start with the Dear Boss letter.
Sure. Okay, the Dear Boss letter, it's debatable whether or not that was... Now, personally, I believe it was real. I think that, you know, there have been a number of newsmen that have taken credit for that, if you want to call it credit, and said they did it, you know, to bring up their news quotas. I don't know that anybody would have been that creative at that time to do such a thing, because the Ripper was really the first guy to write the letters and taunt the police. And there's some collateral evidence that leads me back to the Dear Boss letter. There are subsequent letters that are linked from the From Hell letter that make me believe the Dear Boss letter was for real. Let me try to work work the logic backwards from the from hell letter and I'll get back to the Dear Boss. I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I need to lay some groundwork in order to make my point. And that is, people are aware that there was a letter sent to a man called George Lusk, who was the head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. And now, some people don't believe that was real, even though it came with a piece of the woman's kidney, which was preserved in wine, and had the same piece of renal artery, the same amount of renal artery that was missing from the body, had the same Bright's disease that the body had. I don't believe any newspaperman would be sort of enterprising enough to come up with a kidney that matched and send it not to the police, not to their own newspaper, but to the head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, who was relatively unknown at the time until he received this box.
Right.
He was very hated by the Jews in Whitechapel, though. So if you're Louis Diemschutz, the president of this club, and you're seeing members of your club coming in beaten to a bloody pulp by this vigilance committee, quote unquote, you're mad at this guy. You want to terrorize him. So I think they targeted him because they knew him and they hated him. Because only a Jew from Whitechapel would know who he was and hate him enough to terrorize him with such a thing. Now, if you look at this, at the Lusk letter and the kidney that it came with, the From Hell letter, which, by the way, I believe was inspired by Moby Dick, From Hell's Heart I Stab at Thee, the last line Ahab says before he dies.
Right.
I believe that Diemschutz got that idea from Moby Dick, which was a socialist novel about oppressed socialists working in slave-like conditions, whaling, in Captain Ahab, which was a famous Jewish king who was brought down by Jezebel, and Ahab's named after him. Anyway, I don't want to get into that unless you want me to, but the Lusk letter then, if that was fake, why would they send it to George Lusk? If a newspaper man did that, why would he send it to George Lusk? Why would he choose somebody nobody knew who they were? Why wouldn't he send it to his own newspaper?
Send it to himself. Yeah.
Right. But it was sent to George Lusk, who was this guy that the IWMEC members hated with a purple passion because he was going around with this group of guys beating the daylights out of innocent Jews in the name of catching Jack the Ripper. So I believe they hated him and they wanted to terrorize him. So that letter came with this cardboard box, which had a piece of the kidney in it. Now, I believe that's absolutely authentic. Now, there are people that will even say that's fake, but I don't believe it was fake. Now, if you buy that letter is real, then you have to believe that the Openshaw letter was real. That would have been a letter sent to Dr. Openshaw, the one who did the examination on the kidney and claimed it was the kidney of Catherine Eddowes.
Thomas
he
Openshaw.
He received this letter that was...
Right. Thomas.
Openshaw.
Thomas Openshaw.
All right. Now, Openshaw received this letter, and it was written in the same style as the From Hell, and it was written, in my opinion, by the same hand, and it was written in the same sort of quasi-fake Irishman, like t'other piece and sore. He was trying to write an Irish accent into the letter. So basically that tells us that he was anything but an illiterate Irishman. The person who wrote the From Hell letter is trying to look like an illiterate Irishman. That tells me that he was the exact opposite of an illiterate Irishman. In any case, if you believe the From Hell letter is real, then you have to believe the Openshaw letter is real. Now, if you look at the envelope of the Openshaw letter, it has the same handwriting as the Dear Boss letter, which doesn't match the writing of the From Hell of the Openshaw. That tells you that two different guys probably did it, or one guy who has one kind of handwriting but disguises it in another way.
Right.
In the Openshaw letter, he can't spell hospital; he spells it hospital. But yet on the envelope, it's very well written, very literate, to the curator of forensic sciences at the hospital, and it's spelled correctly on the envelope. But the letter is like the From Hell illiterate Irishman. Then there was this letter sent to McCarthy, who was the owner of the house where Mary Kelly was murdered. And it was basically a house that was full of prostitutes. It was called McCarthy's Rents, and the joke was the girls were the McCarthy's Rents, not the rooms. And McCarthy received this terrorizing letter, which, I did an analysis on it on YouTube. I'd like your viewers to look at, your listeners to look at. And basically, it encodes the names of all my suspects right in this little sketch that's at the bottom of the letter. But that letter matches the Openshaw letter and matches the Dear Boss. So basically, it's kind of a chain. If you believe that the From Hell letter is real, then you have to believe the Openshaw letter is real. That leads you to the McCarthy letter being real, which has the encoded names of Louis Diemschutz, Isaac Kozbrodsky, Prince Kropotkin, and Samuel Friedman in it, in this little sketch of these guys murdering a girl and one guy standing guard. And then that leads you back to the Dear Boss, because on the Openshaw letter, the envelope matches the Dear Boss handwriting.
Well,
so
also,
I think you've got 3 guys writing these letters.
And then you have a couple of pieces of forensic evidence that come into play here that you have to look at. In the Dear Boss letter, they're talking about an ear being cut off, right? And
the Saucy Jackie.
And well, we're going to get to that in a second. That still trips me out, that postcard. But Edo's 3 days later, that actually happened. So that to me just says that the Dear Boss letter was authentic, even if the handwriting doesn't match.
Absolutely. And it's different guys because there's 3 different perpetrators.
Right.
But here's what happened. Diemschutz said, listen, we have to set up an alibi for me that's airtight, but we need propaganda for the club. So we're going to murder this girl in front of our club. Then you 2 guys are going to go back inside the club and wait, and I'm going to run off around the corner where my horse and buggy's parked and pretend to come home and find her. I'm going to go inside, make a bunch of noise. You guys are going to come out with the other club members, pretend to find the body with me. And then I'm going to send everybody running to look for a policeman, ostensibly. I'm going to send you guys towards Mitre Square, where you're going to commit another murder while I'm sitting with the police and absolutely can't be guilty of the second murder. And the police are absolutely going to know that it's the second murder tied to this one, because we promised them in the Saucy Jackie postcard that we were going to clip off the woman's ear, which you guys have to be sure to do in Mitre Square, and which they did do. So you see, it's all tied together, and it helped Diemschutz set up this ironclad alibi, which is what stymied investigators throughout the years, and it's always stopped people from considering Diemschutz as a suspect.
And then has it ever been recovered, Saucy Jackie?
Yeah, they have that one. There are certain bits, certain letters that disappeared through the years because they say certain policemen maybe took them home as souvenirs,
right?
Or people stole them. But there is at least photographic evidence of all the pertinent letters, as I'm sure you've seen.
Yes, I
and
have.
Some of the letters you can actually see. You can see them on display. Every now and then, the Docklands Museum in London does a Jack the Ripper sort of exhibition, and they'll have these letters on display for you to look at.
No fingerprints or anything on any of these letters, right?
No, I think they've all been attempted to be fingerprinted, and in the name of preserving the evidence, probably not a lot of, not every single one of them has probably been completely analyzed as much as it possibly could have, but possibly in the future, someone like Henry C. Lee, the world's leading DNA scientist, could use touch DNA or could find some new method of analyzing these letters and getting the DNA.
Yeah, and now let's talk about back to Saucy Jackie. The reason I've always been intrigued because of the name, right? Saucy Jackie, the From Hell letter. You know, it doesn't get better than that when we're talking about Jack the Ripper. In the case of the Saucy Jackie postcard, and maybe I'm wrong here. Well, I guess I am, because you said it is now surfaced. I thought it was gone. We only had pictures of it.
You know what? That might be true. That might be. I don't want to say for sure.
Oh, okay.
I am of the opinion that they have it, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that.
I was wondering,
because I know that
it.
certain ones have disappeared. But the quality of the photography of the postcard makes me believe they still have it, and I think I've seen it, but I could be wrong. I could have seen a facsimile. But the quality of the photography on it tells me that at least into modern times, I mean, there's color photographs of it. So, at least into modern times, it was held by the police.
Unbelievable. The From Hell letter, I send you, half the kidney, right? It's just like, dude.
Right.
Absolutely.
T'other half I ate.
Yeah.
T'other half. Irish guys don't write t'other. They just say t'other, but they don't write t'other.
Oh man, it is the crazy. Now, is the From Hell letter still around?
I believe they have that. Yeah.
Yeah, they have that one.
I believe they have it. But you know what? I can't. I don't want to say for sure because I don't know for sure that they have it. I believe I've seen it, but I might have seen a facsimile of it.
And who's it signed by?
Catch me if you can, Mr. Lush, is what it says.
I'm looking at it right.
Mr. with an H.
Yeah,
Mr. Again, trying to write they're trying to write an Irish accent into the actual letter.
I mean, you look at this. I'm gonna post this really quick up on Twitter in real time. So just bear with me. But you look at this, and it is the creepiest of the creepy that I can imagine. Now, I wanted to ask you as I'm starting to post this. Now there is the other twist on this as well, which is that all of this was just an elaborate hoax. All of this was just done by the newspapers. Mm-hmm. All of this was just made up. There were nobody. There's nothing here.
Okay. You know my opinion on that, Jimmy, because, listen, I don't care how enterprising a newsman you are in 1888. Where are you going to get your hands on a human kidney with Bright's disease, with 3 inches of renal artery, with the angle of the cut matching the angle of the cut on the body? You know, where are you going to get that? And where are you going to get the idea to do this? You know, this is a bit of propaganda. This was to help their cause, to bring more attention to the crime. This is all very Kropotkin. If you read what Kropotkin's tactics were in his guerrilla warfare against capitalism and Christianity, it's right up his tree. And if you read his statements where he praises Jack the Ripper, there's a couple of places in his writings where he basically says Jack the Ripper did good work, and if he's ever caught, it's the judge that would hang him that deserves to be killed. And it's not the Ripper that deserves to be executed. It's the guy that owns the wretched den where the prostitute was murdered, the prostitute who only asked Jack to pay her rent. How does he know what the prostitute asked Jack to do anyway? And he says, all the Jacks together. You know, how does he know there's more than one Jack? You know, he has way too much interest in and knowledge of the murders, in my opinion. He praises Jack the Ripper twice in his writings.
Where do you think we are? Before I asked that, I apologize. Did it in any way, the series of murders through 1891, did prostitution drop, right? Did crime drop? Did people get off of the streets? What effect did it have on Whitechapel?
Well, during the murders, of course, you know, I'm sure a certain percentage of women stopped prostituting, but they really couldn't. They really had no choice. They had nothing. They had nowhere to sleep, nothing, nowhere to eat. They just took their chances. I don't think that during the murder spree there was any significant drop other than because of the extensive patrols. There would have been a curb in crime just because there was a cop on every corner constantly patrolling and doing rounds. So I'm sure there was some drop in the crime. But I think the main drop in the crime came after these murders started to get, build up a lot of steam. And Queen Victoria said to the Home Office, listen, clean that up, clean that area up. We need to end this. We need to, get this area of Whitechapel cleaned up. And I do see that in the subsequent years, programs were put into place, to get the women off the street, to curb the crime. So, in fact, I hate to give the Rippers any credit, but I believe that their motive was ultimately altruistic, to end prostitution by sacrificing a few martyrs for the cause, and to basically end the sweating system. I don't think they really cared too much about the crime in Whitechapel unless it was that crime that affected their community, the Jewish community. I think, and the workers, the socialist isn't just about Judaism, it's about the workers' rights. And I think that was the main objective all along, that and the attack on Christianity. And I think that they did actually accomplish a lot of what they set out to do.
Now, I have a theory. I want to run this by you really quick. You probably haven't thought about this before, but what about Jack the Ripper was actually the Loch Ness Monster?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a very viable theory because, I mean, how far is it from Whitechapel to Loch Ness? I mean, Inverness it's only probably 10 hours drive. and it does make sense because nobody's found the Loch Ness Monster either. I went there.
See?
And I waited 45 minutes and nothing happened.
It makes sense if you think about it. Plus, Loch Ness Monster, quiet, stealthy, right? It makes a lot of sense. We were talking about everybody earlier tonight if we were going to have any humor on the show. I had to go somewhere. It is such a dark when we think about not only the amount of killing, the way that the entire thing. It is one of the most. It's just completely gnarly, and the fact that nobody was ever caught.
Let me speak to that point. When I wrote this book, what I did at the end of the book, and this was the toughest part of the writing. It was tough trying to recreate Doyle's style and use Old English, but the toughest part of the book was what I call going into Dean Schutz's room, because what I would have to do, as an investigator does, is go into the mind of these killers. And I wrote a number of chapters. Once I give the reader all the information, I go back and I redo the murders a second time from the murderer's viewpoint. And that was very, very damaging to me to do because I had to I used to call it going into their room. And I would have to sort of get into their mindset and write this chapter. The first time I do the murders, the man grabbed the woman. He slammed her against the wall. He punched her in the face. She fell. But in the subsequent chapters, once the reader is clued into the actual killers, I write, from Isaac Kozbrodsky's point of view. I severed her. I don't even want to say it. But, I mean, I had to write it from his point of view, and it was very, very dark, and it was very, very difficult to do and damaging. And I sustained some damage from doing it.
You had to. You
can't unsee what you can't unsee it. You can't unthink it.
No, it's dark. It's dark and it's consuming. And as you continuously research, think about it, contemplate, theorize, write, and fictionalize this, it's consuming. It becomes part of you. And I can't imagine trying to, unravel myself and get back to normal. I bet you couldn't wait to get this thing to your editor. Yeah.
No, I talk to my mom like every night when I have a mama's boy. I talk to my mom every night. She's a huge true crime fan. And she's the one that got me onto these books back when I was a kid. And, my mom, I would bounce stuff off her and she would say, when are you going to be able to stop going in this guy's room? And I said, well, finally, Mom, tonight's the last night. I got to go in his room one last time. And she said, do me a favor, throw a match in there when you leave. Shut the door.
Right.
So, I did that I don't know, psychosomatically, whatever the right term is. I did it and, tried to rid myself of that. But, you like I said, you can't unthink and unsee those things you saw in your mind's eye. Theater of the mind you were talking about last night?
Right.
It was kind of a theater of the mind for me that played out these crimes.
Right. Now, what about Henry and Michael and Cyril today? Do they think that this has been solved?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they never would have put their name on it. Listen, these guys have huge reputations and a lot at stake for them to become a laughingstock backing a theory that doesn't have evidence to support it.
Right.
And, I don't want to name any names, but I'm going to tell you, one of the most prolific Jack the Ripper theorists out there with very successful work approached Dr. Baden and said, first, offered him a reward to basically rubber stamp the theory that author was promoting. Dr. Baden looked at the evidence and said, absolutely not. I'm not putting my name on that. That person then went to Dr. Wecht, who also refused, and then Dr. Lee, who also refused. So they already have a history of turning down Jack the Ripper theorists who believed they solved the case. But all three of them jumped in with both feet, and their names are on the cover of my book, and they're wholeheartedly backing me on this.
What about the rest of
By the way, I haven't even told you all my evidence yet. So anyway.
Well, I can keep you on for overtime if you want to go through that. That's not a problem.
Oh, I'll stay as long as you want me.
Okay, not a problem. But what about the law community in Great Britain? What did they think about the book? And I'm talking about Scotland Yard and the Metropolitan Police.
You know what? I don't know. They haven't contacted me. I don't know. I'm hoping that my contacts, with the doctors will eventually get me in front of the right people. Here's my dream. My dream would be that the future king of England, young guy, might get a hold of this theory and say, this theory not only makes sense and is backed by 3 of the world's top criminalists, but it's also something that exonerates once and for all my family from blame on this crime. Because this pervasive rumor of this royal involvement still exists this very day. If you get 10 educated people into a room, cocktail party, and you bring up Jack the Ripper, someone's bound to bring up the fact that, wasn't it a royal?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at some point in time, my dream would be for someone in the royal family to look at this and say, I believe this kid solved it. I think we've actually got a solution to this crime. I mean, I've been told by the district attorney of my county that he could prosecute this case and definitely get a conviction against at least one, probably all 3 of my suspects. Maybe couldn't get Kropotkin, but he could get the 3 killers. And I've been told by a very prominent attorney, that he couldn't defend them properly because of the evidence that we've gathered. So, my dream would be someday that Scotland Yard, the Home Office, somebody, even one of the princes, would take a look at this and say, hey, this finally puts that rumor to bed. And let's convict these guys, in absentia. Let's close this case once and for all. You're never going to get everybody to agree. There's loads of people with a dog in the fight that'll never agree that I've solved it, no matter how much evidence I present. I could dig up the body of Dean Schutz and one of the victims and find a DNA match, and they still wouldn't buy it.
Right.
You're never going to convince the whole world. But I just need to convince the right people. So you remember Dr. Baden was hired by Scotland Yard at one point to solve the crimes in the 60s, wasn't able to do it. So he could possibly be the key at some point for someone, some royal family member or someone high up in Scotland Yard or the Home Office to actually take a look at my case and possibly deem it sufficient for convictions.
Well, we'll talk about the evidence when we come back after this break, Randy, but I need to ask you, out of Michael Baden and Henry Lee and Cyril Wecht, all 3, such respect, but which one do I take out to dinner and knock back some scotch? Who's the coolest of the 3?
Oh, God, that's tough to answer. Baden is so interesting and terrific, and just such a personality. And you judging from what I know of you, from listening to you, I think Baden might be your guy.
Really?
Henry Lee, of course, is my guy. Why? Because Henry Lee is a martial artist and he's Chinese.
Right.
And he's a huge Bruce Lee fan. So when I go out with Dr. Lee and we knock back some wine, and believe me, we do, I have the time of my life, Dr. Lee just recently lost his wife.
Yes.
And he's a very strong man. He's coming back, So Dr. Lee probably wouldn't be in the mood to party at this particular time in his life.
What about Cyril?
But he is
Cyril drinks some
Wecht
scotch.
Cyril Wecht can can knock it back. Cyril Wecht is so interesting and so, but I look at Dr. Wecht more as with reverence, with respect. I mean, I respect the other 2, don't get me wrong. But the other 2, if you look at like pictures of me with them, they're goofing around with me. They got their arm around me. They're, doing kung fu stuff with me. Wecht, I always kind of hold him in a sort of different category. I look at him as with reverence, and when I talk to him, I'm very careful about what I say.
Right.
He's very quick to snap. Not snap it. I don't know if that's the right term, but he's quick to say, no, you can't say that. No, that's not right.
I can only
no,
imagine.
That doesn't match.
I can only imagine.
He's very meticulous, and so, it just depends what kind of night you want to have.
Man, that is the serious A-team, by the way. I mean, it does. That's it. If you it's
the A+ team.
That's the A+
it's
team.
The A+ team. I'm the only negative on the team. I'm the only negative on the team. If you take my negativity on the scale, there's still A+. Without even with me detracting from the team.
We're going to take a break right here, a little overtime, with author Randy Williams talking about his book Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hey, what up, y'all? Sugar Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night, you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. GetTheTea.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. GetTheTea.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at natureyouth.com. Natureyouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at natureyouth.com. That's natureyouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Happy Halloween, everybody. Going to do a little overtime with our guest tonight, Randy Williams, discussing his new book, Sherlock Holmes and the Autumn of Terror, discussing and solving the Jack the Ripper case. Now, the conversation has been absolutely fascinating, and I've learned so much tonight, which is the best part of Fade to Black and what I do here, Randy. But for me, it's always getting to, I love nonfiction. I love documentaries. I like facts. I like the black and white of it. And so
we're doing that.
Well, yeah, as great as this conversation has been, we're getting to what I think is the most fascinating part, which is the evidence. And for you to say, hey, wait, whoa, we didn't even get to the evidence yet. Let's go down the list. Number one.
All right. Sorry if you hear some background noise. It's there were some trick or treaters out there, but my faithful manservant Igor took care of it.
Okay.
Now let's talk about the some of the evidence. Okay. First of all, multiple killer evidence. First of all, we have two of the murders that were committed with two knives, a 6-inch and a 9-inch. Martha Tabram was killed with a 6-inch and a 9-inch knife. But the double event murders, one was a 6-inch knife and one was a 9-inch. Of course, that matches the idea that one of my guys wasn't there for the second murder. We have Emmett Smith's statement of the three guys that attacked her. We have Israel Schwartz, the witness that claimed to have seen two Jewish men attacking the woman. A guy called Joseph Lewend and another guy, Joseph Levy, and Harry Harris saw Catherine Eddowes talking to a man that perfectly fit Friedman's description that matched Israel Schwartz's description of the guy smoking a pipe across the road, talking to the victim just before she was killed. And then they later on said something like, "Oh, I don't want to really talk about it. I don't want anything to do with people like that. People, not a person." The descriptions, they're always describing a guy 30 to 35 or 40 or 17 or 19, all perfectly matched Diemschutz. Let's talk about the fact that Diemschutz himself, let me go into him because I think that's important. He was 27 or 28 during the murders. Now, Diemschutz itself is a fake name. There's no such surname as Diemschutz. It doesn't exist. Diemschutz is a word that means protector of noble women or protector of smoke. He spelled his name 12 different ways that I could find. I think because he couldn't remember how to spell it or he was trying to throw off the police, but he never spelled it the same way twice. If you think about the name Diemschutz, protector of noble women, Diem can mean in Russian dame, as in Dame Edith Evans, like a knight, female knight, or it can mean smoke. Schutz means protector of smoke, like up in smoke or smoke and mirrors, or it can mean protector of noble women. And a prostitute is the absolute antithesis in their minds of the noble woman. I think he knew that it meant both of those things, and I think that was a little word game he played. He was educated. He spoke Russian, English, Yiddish, and Hebrew. Could write in Hebrew. He was a very educated guy. He found a body, supposedly, along with the other three guys. But here's something very important. He claims, in one case, when he gave his statement to the police, he claimed he was a costume jewelry salesman. Now, two of my victims, Tabram and Chapman, both were known to have bought and resold costume jewelry. Tabram was shopping for costume jewelry the night she died. Her husband gave her his paycheck the night before she died to buy costume jewelry in order to avoid prostitution. And she was killed in George Yard Stable across from her house, which is, according to Diemschutz's statements to the police, I keep my horse and buggy stabled in George Yard Stables. He later, subsequently, when he was arrested for another crime, he claimed he was a horseshoer. Now, Jack the Ripper was known to be covered in costume jewelry, fake gold chain, fake big red jewel, but a horseshoe tie pin. And he claims to be a horseshoer later on when he gets arrested. He tells this ridiculous story about his pony. He comes upon this body and his pony refuses to move past this body. So he prods it with his whip and says, "Oh, it feels like a body." His whole story, when you read it, is so fake. I call it the phony pony story. Mm-hmm. I run a horse ranch. That's my hobby. I have horses here. Horses don't see much better than we do in the dark. But a horse that goes to market, as Diemschutz said he did the night of the murder, which is also fake, because he was Jewish, and that's their Sabbath. They're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. He says he went to market that day. And this horse that goes to market every day is not going to be afraid of a woman who was murdered 20 minutes before, laying 12 feet away from him in the dark. The horse would walk right past it. But he tells the police, who don't know much about horses, that his pony was startled. I call it the phony pony story. He gave so many conflicting statements when you read his statements. Investigators call it leakage, due to what they call cognitive complexity. It's hard to keep your story straight, and it causes inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
He knew he had pieces of guilty knowledge. He said she had candies in one hand and grapes in the other. So did Kozbrodsky. There weren't any grapes in her hand. There were candies, all right, but the grapes were 12 feet away, covered in blood, but nobody thought they had anything to do with the murders, so nobody paid attention to the grapes. Diemschutz and Kozbrodsky said she had grapes in one hand and candy in the other. How'd they know that? They only found them 3 days later, the grapes. How did they know? Diemschutz also said, the woman I found, she was dressed quite a bit better than the woman that was killed a couple of weeks ago. How did he know that?
How would he know?
It was pitch black.
Right.
Furthermore, there were no pictures of Annie Chapman ever published that showed how she was dressed. Her clothes were, torn up and covered in blood. How would he know how she was dressed? How did he become an expert the next morning after the murder, when he found the body, quote unquote, on what the previous victim was wearing? It just doesn't make sense. It's what we call guilty knowledge. He made statements to the police and the court about, I lit a match, Kozbrodsky lifted the body. Later on, I lifted the body while Kozbrodsky lit a match. Later on, I never touched the body. He said her hands were crossed across her breast. Her hands had grapes and candy. In another statement to the court, he said, I never saw her hands. I don't know what her hands were doing. He made all these conflicting statements, that don't make any sense when you read them. He had guilty knowledge. And that's, like I said, it basically refers to a suspect knowing details of a crime that were strategically held back by police that only someone directly involved or someone who has spoken to the actual perpetrator could know. The day after the murder, Diemschutz posed for pictures for these guys to draw him, and he had a full beard in these pictures. But yet, when he showed up for the court inquest to Stride's death 2-3 days later, his beard was gone. Why would you shave your beard? Jews are forbidden to shave that beard by the Torah unless there's extenuating circumstances. But yet he knew that a police constable, William Smith, had seen the Ripper talking to Stride on the corner near the club. And the guy described Diemschutz to a T, described exactly the figure that posed for those pictures with the beard. So I believe he shaved his beard off, and the only known drawing of him from the court shows him without a beard, clean shaven. Why did he shave his beard 3 days after the murders? I believe because he knew William Smith would be there, and he thought, oh, this guy's going to recognize me. Guys, we can't dye our hair or wear makeup, so how do we change our appearance? Growing or shaving a beard. That's what he did. Why did he shave his beard exactly? So these are some bits of evidence that just point at this guy, especially the guilty knowledge. When he went to court, he never mentioned Friedman being there at the crime scene. He mentioned it only in the Hebrew newspaper that he published. So he mentions Friedman being one of the guys that came out the door and ran for police. But in the statements in court and to the police, Friedman's name is never brought up. Never mentions him. Why? So it's because Friedman ran from the crime scene, dropped the knife that I told you about,
right,
and never came back to the club. So they couldn't account for him. So they never mentioned him. There's a lot of this. Diemschutz says to the police, "Oh, I'm the steward of this club. I've been the steward for 6 or 7 years." He was 26 at the time. Means he was the steward from 19. But the club was started in 1885. So that was only 2.5, 3 years before the killings. So how did he get 6 or 7 years? That's a lie. Why? Why the lie? We look at Kozbrodsky. He was 17 or 18 at the time. He was arrested with Diemschutz 6 months later in that crime I told you about where they rioted and, it had all these ties to the double event. He's the only other guy that claims to have seen grapes in the girl's hand, in Stride's hand. He lived right near Mary Jane Kelly. He lived right on the same street as her, near the gas works in Stepney before she moved to the house she was murdered in. But when he was younger, well, he still lived there, but she lived right next to him years before she was murdered in the new house. And Kozbrodsky, I found a burglary conviction for a guy called Samuel Friedman, who would have been 19 years old in 1888. I believe that was Kozbrodsky that was arrested, and he used Friedman's name. I can't prove it, but I will eventually, hopefully.
Right.
Now, talking about Friedman, he's the guy I told you that had the rape conviction
right.
and the burglary conviction in his name. He was 41 or 42 at the time. He lived right by that decoy knife, or the bloody knife that was found by P.C. Drage. He had a tailor shop right near the club. And, let's talk about the tailor. Diemschutz's wife, Kozbrodsky, and Friedman were all hat makers. Now, there's a hat connection to these crimes. Some of the victims, their hat was found like right next to the body, right next to the head. How did it fall off right next to their head? I believe it was removed. The hat pin was taken out and maybe kept as a souvenir, a piece of costume jewelry that maybe Diemschutz would have sold to the girls. But, the hat doesn't fall off at the end of the struggle. It falls off at the beginning of the struggle if it's not pinned to the head. So why was it right next to the head? All of my guys were involved in the hat making industry except Diemschutz. His wife was, though. And the Ripper himself was described by eyewitnesses as wearing a large number of hats and coats. A wide-awake hat, a billycock hat, a peaked cap, a deerstalker cap like Sherlock Holmes wears, right. A Yankee cap, a felt hat, a cloth cap, a round cap, ad nauseum. He was described as wearing a number of coats, an astrakhan, which is the traditional Jewish coat, cutaway coat, overcoat, frock coat, long coat, mourning suit, as in mourning a death, pea jacket. Who would have access to all these hats and coats but a tailor or a hat maker? So, that piece, it doesn't convict him by any means, but it adds to, the suspicion. His wife, Diemschutz's wife, Sarah Anna, the weak constitution that he was worried about panicking when he found the body, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
She attacks a policeman with a hair broom, And Kropotkin, the person I believe funded the whole thing, he started the club. Prince Peter Alexievich Kropotkin. He was in prison twice. For what? For hiring people to kill others for political gain. He was ejected from Switzerland under suspicion of involvement in the assassination of Tsar Alexander II. It's hard to get ejected from Switzerland. They're very neutral.
Right.
He was in prison. He was forced to leave Switzerland at the insistence of the Russian government. And, he received numerous death threats from the Russian Holy League, which was organized to protect the Tsarist regime. Right? He was actually targeted by them. Later on in France, Kropotkin was arrested again under suspicion that he played a role in terrorist attacks in Lyons. They never could prove it, but he was still imprisoned and spent 3 years in Clairvaux prison. And after his imprisonment, he was expelled yet again, and then he settled in London. In his writings, he names anarchism, as his cause, and he names the two greatest enemies of anarchism as Christianity and capitalism, which I pointed out earlier were the main targets of the Ripper killings. He made statements where he praises Jack the Ripper and basically makes excuses for Jack the Ripper, because I think he knew that someday someone would uncover him, and he wanted his readers, his followers, to sort of say, well, I know why he did it. His mother built a church.
Well, let me ask you this really quick. I don't want to run out of time. I want to get this in. Did any of them escape back to Russia? Do we know, the follow-up on any of them? What happened?
Well, what I do know is this. Kropotkin appeared just after the last murder of Francis Coles, appeared with Stepniak, who I mentioned, the knife murderer and writer from Russia. He appeared at the IWMEC. It was in the newspaper. I've got it all on record on my website. And he said, all of you Russians need to return with me to Russia immediately to fight the good fight, for the proletariat against the bourgeoisie. Mm-hmm. I need all of you Russians to return back to Russia with me. And I think he did that to extract his man after the mission was completed. He knew it was getting hot. He knew that Diemschutz had been arrested with the other two for an unrelated crime, but he thought somebody's going to figure this out.
Right.
And he extracted his man after the operation that he organized and funded. So, I don't have, and I will get it though, when I eventually get funding from, say, A&E or History or somebody that maybe want to do a show with me, I'm going to find the exact records of him leaving. But I do know that in the census taken after 1891, Sarah Anna is listed in the census as being a married woman living alone. No mention of Louis Diemschutz anymore. The wife is still there, but he's gone. Friedman, after the arrest, he remained a fugitive. He bailed. He didn't show up for sentencing. Diemschutz went to prison in Pentonville Prison for his part in those riots that I talked about. And Kozbrodsky got off with a fine, and Friedman never showed up for court. He remained a fugitive, and nobody ever knows what happened to him after that. So I don't have evidence that they left, but my guess is that Diemschutz left with Kropotkin, that Friedman may have left or may have been murdered, may have lived out his life. You know, I would guess that probably we would find out that Kozbrodsky died in a tragic horse and buggy accident, and Friedman hanged himself or something, and nobody even bothered caring because they were just footnotes in the case.
Right.
And maybe Kropotkin and Diemschutz wanted to maybe tidy up loose ends, but I can't prove that. Eventually, I hope to.
Fascinating. You're on to something, and it's put together correctly. I think that all of the other approaches to this have been, what do I want to, done for sensationalism, right? Not based on fact or historical stuff. It's done to sell books and make a movie and have fun with it. This is a bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
You're so right. I couldn't agree more.
Now, where can everybody get the book?
Well, it's available. The easiest way to get it is on Amazon.com. You can get it at, Amazon UK, Amazon USA, all Amazon sites carry it. It comes in Kindle, paperback, hardback. And you know what I do for my readers? I've been doing this, and people seem to like it. When they buy the book, if they write to me on my website, which is Randy Williams versus Jack the Ripper on Facebook, if they write to me, what I do is I have these sort of ornamental stickers that I sign. And then I mail the stickers to the reader, and they stick it inside the book. So it's kind of like having a signed copy.
Yeah, very cool.
And so anybody that buys the book, I do that. I pick up the expense, because I am grateful that they're supporting me. But Amazon.com, and if you go to my page, there's all kinds of links, my Facebook page for the book. I really want your readers to look at the YouTube page. It's called The McCarthy Letter, in which I analyze this letter and show this bizarre sketch that was done. And in the sketch are encrypted the names of Louis Diemschutz, Isaac Kozbrodsky, Samuel Friedman, and Prince Kropotkin. The drawing is of two guys murdering a girl while a third guy stands guard, and the drawings are made up of the letters of their names. And I did an animation that shows where the letters are hidden.
It's absolutely fascinating, and everybody, the links, not only for Facebook, but Amazon are over. I think we have the YouTube link, too, as well, over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can just click right there. It'll take you straight to Randy. What a fascinating conversation tonight, and what I can't imagine a better way to spend a Halloween. Randy Williams, the best. Thank you so much, my friend.
What a pleasure it's been. I want to thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's show as well, because I'm a Stone Circle guy. I've been to Avebury, and the best part of Avebury is the pub right in the middle of the circle.
I know, right?
But, I'm looking forward to Hugh Newman because like I said, I've been to Stonehenge. I love all that, and I'm really looking forward. I loved last night's show with Dave Schrader, friend of mine.
Man, you know what? Just thank you for being a Fadernaut and a fan and paying attention to the show and what we do, man. It just means so much. Thank you so much, Randy. Fascinating conversation.
Oh yeah. My pleasure. I'm a Ripper Knot too.
A Ripper Knot. Thank you, Randy. And go hand out some candy. Enjoy the rest of your Halloween tonight, and we'll speak very soon. Thank you so much.
It has been an absolute pleasure. I so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to your listeners for hearing me out. I can't thank you enough. It's been a real terrific pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Randy, and we'll speak soon. Thank you. Great conversation. Now, the links for Rent. Man, what a Halloween show. Absolutely, I'm stunned. The links for Randy are over at jimmychurchradio.com. His Facebook links are right there, and Amazon as well. The book is a fascinating read, and I hope everybody learned something tonight. And again, happy Halloween to everybody. There's a couple of things I had noted at the beginning of the show tonight about the news and these news cycles that we're going through. I have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring, but our recent history and the way that we have been dealing with these news cycles, the news being topped from the day before every single day, I just can't imagine what tomorrow's going to bring. We'll discuss that tomorrow night on the show. But I had mentioned one of the things that was overshadowed in the news cycle lately is the Las Vegas shooting, right? Mandalay Bay, Stephen Paddock. Well, right here in the valley, not too far from the bunker, and again, this just went through the news cycle and disappeared, but I found this very interesting. And that is Stephen Paddock's brother was arrested last Wednesday right here in the valley in North Hollywood, just a couple of blocks from the bunker. And his name was Bruce Paddock, 59 years old. He's taken into custody at an assisted living facility right here. And he was arrested for child pornography. Now, what is interesting here? Now, talk about coincidences, and it is beyond the scope. But he had been investigated for a long time. Now, what were the odds of... They are saying that they were investigating him going back to January and August of 2014, and that he exchanged photographs and so forth. Now, what is interesting, they said that he was homeless, but he's got a laptop computer, right, that's got these images on it. The way to silence anybody, is child porn, right? And that's how the feds do it. There's just no question about it. But they were investigating the brother of a killer that just shot and killed 59 people and wounded countless others in Las Vegas. What are the odds of this actually going down? We're talking about 7.5 billion people in the world, right? The odds of that killer and his brother being investigated for child pornography leading up to this, and now his brother is shut away and nobody can talk to him and he is silenced. If that isn't a conspiracy, man, there is something funky going on in this case. And it is now so deeply covered up and buried in the news cycle, it may never even be talked about again. It's one of the most fascinating parts of all of this. Man. Okay, and I've got so much more. We'll cover some of these other news headlines that, quite frankly, are buried. Like, for instance, last week, the Nikola Tesla docs were revealed right here on the internet, on the FBI.gov website. Nobody talked about it. The Tesla docs. Think about that for a second. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want to thank Randy Williams for coming in and bringing it strong tonight on this Halloween. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark T. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar, Fady by Dale, Webmaster Drew, The Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2017 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Tomorrow night, live from the UK, Hugh Newman and his new book, Stone Circles. Until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.